It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. We have a nice panel today. Martineau is slumming from This Week in Google. Also here, Larry Magid from connectsafely.org and our favorite submariner, nuclear expert, and SSD whiz, Allyn Malventano. We'll talk about social media and its impact on the young, Microsoft's continuing problems with their Exchange server, and the White House's conference for social media creators. Why weren't we invited? All that and a lot more coming up next on TWiT.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Tech, episode 987, recorded Sunday, July 7th, 2024. Often plagiarized, never equaled. It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news, of which there's precious little. Fortunately, we have an excellent panel who can fill the next 2 hours of your life. Martineau has a lot of expertise with that on This Week in Google, our Wednesday show. She also writes for The Information and is always a very welcome member of our team. You started on TWiT, and then we brought you to Twig.
I was about to say, every time I'm here, it's full circle.
Yeah. We thought, oh, she's so good. We should put her on a much worse show. And
it's not worse.
I know.
It's different.
It's baby
it's sillier.
TWiT. It's little TWiT. Yeah, it's
baby
sillier.
TWiT. I don't know. I'd say the average age is probably higher.
Oh, gosh. Well, some people do call it This Week in Grandpas. We are both twice your age, but we struggle. We do our best. Anyway, it's great to have you, Paris. I have brought younger people on for you this time, but not much. Allyn Malventano is also here. He is, we know Allyn from back in the day of This Week in Computer Hardware. We had Ryan Shroud on last week. In fact, we were hoping to get you both on, but the schedules didn't work out, unfortunately. Yep. Currently, Allyn is working at Phison, which is, I'm trying to remember, was that a spinoff? No. You were at Intel, and then they spun off Solidyne. And
Yep.
you were there for a while, and now you're at Phison. But it's all the same stuff. It's NAND technology, right?
It's just making the SSDs go vroom. That's it.
That's his job. He used to make submarines go vroom, and now he makes SSDs go vroom. It's great to have you, Allyn. And a longtime friend also of the network, Larry Magid, who is for many, many years been on our shows. He's also a CBS radio correspondent and the president of connectsafely.org, which is all about keeping kids safe online. I've been getting in a lot of fights lately, Larry.
Uh-oh.
Because Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General of the United States of America, proposed that we put warning labels on social media for kids. And this was following Jonathan Haidt's book about the kids being abandoned to social media, not being properly parented, and blaming essentially social media for a mental health crisis among young people. And I don't think I buy that. But here, wait a minute. You're an expert in all this.
Well, if you go to the front page of connectsafely.org and you look at the top right column, you will see my post, which says, "Why Surgeon General Social Media Warning Label is a Bad Idea."
Oh, you're on the right side of this one. Good.
So I'm on the same side you are. Now, I have to admit, I'm not 100% on the side of, hey, it's just honky-dory and nothing to worry about.
No, absolutely not.
But I do think that the warning label is a bad idea for a number of reasons. One is, warning fatigue. I was over at the Fox studio in the green room a couple weeks ago, and there was a cancer warning label on the coffee machine.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, come on. At what point do you just tune this stuff
Was that
out?
a California Prop 65 warning, or were they just being silly?
Prop something or other. Yeah. Every building you go in, and it doesn't say, it says cancer. It doesn't say whether there's a plastic cup here that might conceivably give you cancer if you eat it, or a pool of radioactive material in the basement.
Yeah, you can't distinguish it. Yeah.
Sense of proportionality. But that's one aspect. But the other is, look, we put warning labels on cigarettes. Now, there is no safe use of tobacco. So that makes sense to me. we put warning labels on alcohol because it's known that alcohol, but even the alcohol, it'll say, it can cause birth issues if you're pregnant. Children should avoid it. But I liken social media in this column to kind of like ice cream. And I've used the analogy of chocolate.
That's a much better analogy.
Ice cream, if you eat too much of
it'll kill you.
It'll kill you.
Yeah, it's a good
if
way
you're
to go.
allergic to it, it's going to harm you. If you have diabetes or something, it might be absolutely counterindicated. But if you have a little ice cream now and then within moderation, you're going to enjoy it, and it's going to make you feel good. And unlike ice cream, actually social media can help you. I mean, it can cure some loneliness issues. It can put you in touch with like-minded people. If you're LGBTQ and live in the middle of nowhere and you can't possibly find somebody to talk to about your orientation, you can go online and find people. You know the drill, Leo. And so I think it was a misguided step, pandering to the paranoia that is going on right now. It's very fashionable to be anti-tech, anti-social media. And I think it's not very thoughtful. And finally, I think it detracts from the real issue, which is how do we protect ourselves? How do we regulate tech in sensible ways and get them to stop some of the inappropriate activities? How do we educate people to use technology properly? What is the role of parents? What is the role of communities? There's a lot of things we could be talking about. I don't think warning labels are really the solution.
Yeah. And in fact, sometimes something like that makes you feel good and you can go, well, job done. We've protected our children. Let's move on.
Right.
When in fact, you haven't really handled any of the real issues that are causing anxiety.
I think, tobacco and smoking is down, which is good, but I don't think it was the warning labels that did it. I mean, warning labels were on there for many, many years before we started seeing a decline in smoking. It had to do with things like mandatory anti-smoking rules in buildings or other things that actually worked, that helped cut down on smoking.
You could argue that it's all helped, right? Banning cigarette ads on television started it.
Yeah.
Putting the Surgeon General's warning labels on tobacco. But you're right. I mean, in other countries, in Canada, the warning labels are graphic and horrible.
Very.
Right? You've seen them?
Yeah. They're haunting.
They're haunting, but I don't know if they're effective.
I'd say it seems like the biggest decline in smoking has been attributed to the rise of vapes and other nicotine delivery methods. And I don't really know what the one-to-one equivalent for social media use is like that. But I think that your point is ultimately correct, that putting the warning label on there for kids or other users who could be at risk really isn't going to move the needle much here. It's going to be a wide variety of things that would actually have some sort of effect on a population level.
Right. And unlike tobacco, again, there is a safe and appropriate use of social media. There are many people who use social media in a beneficial way, and we need to distinguish between the negative things people do on social media and the positive things. I mean, it's like cars. Should we ban cars because people die in car accidents, or should we make cars safer, make drivers more educated, have better enforcement of traffic rules? I mean, there are things you can do because cars are an example of something that has both positive usage as well as dangers. And there are many things like that in life. In fact, almost everything I can think of had some danger to it.
There was actually, this is from Connect Safely, from the, I thought, very good column from Nathan Davies here. Mm-hmm. He refers to a European study that found during the COVID pandemic, bullying went down because kids weren't in school.
Yeah.
And spent more time online. Sure, there's cyberbullying, but in fact, actual bullying went down. We should put a warning label on schools. I mean, they're dangerous too, but everything has some element of danger. And I think to focus on what really is causing anxiety with a younger generation and to attempt to do something about it.
Well, when we started Connect Safely back in around 2004, we were reacting in part to this TV show called To Catch a Predator, which
Stranger Danger.
Stranger Danger. And if you're going to warn people, warn them about clergy, teachers,
relatives,
coaches, relatives. I would say parents even.
Yeah,
those are the don't let your kid go home and don't let them go to school. Don't let them go to the doctor's office.
Parents, you grew up in a generation that wasn't allowed out to play. And I'll include my kids in this because we were taught that there was such danger out there in the world that they call it stranger danger. And there were predators everywhere. And so you couldn't let your kids out to play. Did your parents?
I
were a
was
little
allowed
hipper.
out to play. Yeah, they were pretty chill.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for your parents.
But no, it's an entire movement, and I think it's kind of gotten only more extreme within the last decade or two.
Yeah.
With the rise of helicopter parenting and the rise of a whole suite of technological tools to effectively surveil every aspect of your child's life. And I mean, I'm not a parent myself, so I'm not going to pretend to have any particular insight to this, but there's something to be said about maybe letting kids live a little bit. I was recently kind of looking into the whole industry of phones designed just for children. And at first I thought this was maybe going to be like a dumb phone that just lets you call. But no, instead it is like a smartphone, but it sends your parent like an overview of every single thing your child does.
That's horrible.
And like sends alerts if there could be anything sexual being exchanged in text messages or Instagram DMs or like any sort of potential. You can essentially put alerts for anything you want to be notified about your child's activity online, which I understand to an extent because parents want to protect their kids. But it is also a level of surveillance and involvement that I think is unprecedented in American life. We go back like before smartphones.
There is, I have to say, and I'm sure you cover this, Larry, and I personally have experienced this, a real danger, especially for young boys online, with something called sextortion.
Absolutely.
And, there is a danger. There's a danger at the local mall. There's a danger at your church, unfortunately. There's always a danger. But it's important that parents be aware of it. Slapping a warning label on social media is not as good as saying, here's some of the dangers. Tell us about sextortion. How does that work?
Yeah, we have a parent's guide to sextortion, a teen guide on the site. And basically, sextortion is when typically you're a boy, a teenage boy, or perhaps preteen. You get a outreach from a person you think is probably a girl, assuming they assume you're straight. She, I'm putting she in quotes, offers to send you a picture of her in a nude or whatever in exchange for you sending one of yourself. So it's a tantalizing offer, as I remember.
If you're a teenage boy, yes.
If you're a teenage boy, very tantalizing offer. And it turns out that girl is a criminal and probably somewhere in West or what part of Africa, but there's one or two countries where this is very prevalent. And it's a scam, obviously. And the reason they call it sextortion is because there's an extortion attempt. That person or that syndicate, that criminal syndicate, will ask you for money. And if you don't give the money, they will threaten to distribute that photo to your family and friends and elsewhere. And there's many reasons why, you should be very, very, very careful before you exchange nudes with somebody you don't know. And two, if it does happen to you, not pay the money because it's may not stop them. And B, one of the things we try to explain in our guide is it's unfortunate if this happens to you. It's potentially very, very unfortunate, but you will get through it. I mean, if you are a parent and this happens to your kids, what you need to do is be supportive and assure them that they will survive this. They will get through this. There will be a point in their life when they'll look back at it and they may not laugh about it, but they certainly will, their life will go on. And,
because and sadly, some kids have actually taken their own lives because they're so terrified that their parents will find out and that their school will find out when it's all fake anyway. And as long as kids feel like they can go to their parents, the case that happened to me was a good friend whose teenage son was sextorted, but his son felt safe to tell his dad. And his dad was sophisticated enough to know, I know what's going on. And, there wasn't a punishment. And so the kid's fine and just graduated from high school. I'm very proud to say he's a really sweet kid.
Good.
But it could have gone the other way. That's why when the Surgeon General, just put warning labels on social media and then you're done with it. No, there's a real education that needs to happen. Yes, there are risks. Of course there are risks. And as you said, there's also very great benefit. If you turn off social media, there are a lot of kids who have nobody to talk to about their sexuality or about their life. This is the thing we don't, as elders, sometimes don't get, is this is a new generation, and they communicate online. This is their mall. This is their hangout.
Their phone, their mall, their radio, their television, their everything. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, when we were kids, parents didn't like us being on the phone all the time.
I had this party line thing in LA. Somehow we figured out you could make a call to a certain number, and all these kids from all over LA were talking to each other on the phone. My being one of them. And one day I got on a bus, went all the way across town, and met some of these girls that I'd been talking to. I don't know who was more disappointed when we finally met, them or me. But there was a lot of anticipation.
Wow. Isn't that a wild story? Larry Magid, you were a wild boy.
Wild child.
Wild child. Anyway, I thought I'd ask you, because we haven't had you on since that whole brouhaha went on. And I've gotten a lot of email from people saying, no, I teach kids. They're really suffering out there. And I'm not saying kids aren't suffering. I'm not saying there's not anxiety. But there's a lot of reasons for it. We went through 3 years of them taking classes at home. I mean, That was disaster for a lot of kids. I think there are probably a lot of young people who say, is there a future with climate change? What's it going to be like when I'm your age?
If I'm your age.
If I ever get there. There are a lot of things to worry about, a lot of reasons for anxiety, and just say, well, it's technology is the problem. And although I have to say, I was at the barbershop yesterday, and
nice.
Which Ferris will vouch for, I desperately needed. And
looks nice.
And one of the barbers, I guess, had childcare duty. His 2 kids, maybe 4 and 6, were there while Dad was working. They both had iPads, and they were just there playing games for the whole time, the whole hour I was there. I imagine all day. That's an economic problem as much as anything else. Yeah. He has to work. Probably mom is working too. And there's no Head Start. There's no program for the kids. That's an economic issue as much as anything.
I'm going to botch the details on this because I read it sometime in the last couple of weeks. But there have been actually a number of studies that bear out exactly what you just said, that a main one part of the reason I looked into this is I think it's very interesting that there is no consensus in the scientific community as to whether or not social media is bad or good for kids, because of all the reasons we just talked about. Because it's incredibly complicated, a convoluted topic, and it's mixed. But when you're looking at it from an economic angle, increased screen time and social media use, that ends up being more detrimental to lower income children than higher income children, because of all the reasons you'd probably imagine. And I do think that that's an aspect of this that we need to consider. And I think it's an aspect of it that isn't being considered in sort of blanket statements or bans.
Yeah, you know what needs a warning symbol? Poverty. Let's put a warning label on poverty.
I gave a talk in a very low income area, which also happened to have a lot of street crime. And the parents there basically said to me, look, I'm much happier with my kids sitting at home on social media than I am going out on the street, because they were worried about the street. Rightfully so in that particular neighborhood.
Yeah. So I guess the bottom line, it's a complex issue. It's very easy to go to a restaurant and see an entire family sitting around the table on their phones and saying, you see, this is the problem. But it's more complex than that. There are, of course, we all need to spend more time with each other and less time on the screen. I'll go for that. But it's not as simple as saying, ban social media or.
And the other thing that everybody should understand is that correlation is not the same thing as causation. So just because we've seen an increase in mental illness since the iPhone was invented in 2007 doesn't mean the iPhone and the Android phone and everything about it are at fault. I mean, there are lots of things, as you pointed out, Leo. There are many factors that we need to look at in addition to technology. Technology is one of them, but there are a lot of other factors.
That's what Candace Ogers has been saying, and of course she wrote the piece in Nature that debunks Jonathan Haidt's book, and is a foremost expert in this field and studies the impact of child rearing on kids. So has a little something to say about it. And she says, it's a complex issue, and correlation does not equal causation. And I think that's enough said. Enough said. And Allyn, because you have no children and you've never been a child, you had nothing to say about that.
I have raised children who are no longer in the house.
Have you? I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Never mind.
While I was in the Navy.
Oh, nice. And you were traveling around.
Are you talking about the enlisted personnel, or are you actually real children?
I made it to senior enlisted and then stuck at that level for the second half.
Let's take a little break. Come back with more. It's a great panel, and we do have some news. Not a lot. This is always July and August. Always are a little difficult on tech news. We will have a Samsung
All
event
the tech
next week.
execs are off on their vacations.
Yeah, they don't want to do anything. Even the hackers take a break during the dog days of summer. So there isn't really a lot.
Hey, hackers need PTO too.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, they've also got the Black Hat Conference, which when is it? Oh, it's in August.
That's in August in Vegas.
Yeah.
Perfect time, right?
God.
Nothing better.
If you don't get hacked to death, you'll cry just walking down the street.
I think the next podcast convention, the podcast movement, is Washington, D.C. in August. And I said, yeah, no, pass. You know that Washington, D.C. is a swamp, right? It was actually literally built on a swamp. August is not the time to go to Washington, D.C.
But I thought Trump drained it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's right. The
true.
swamp was drained. Never mind.
Yeah.
Forget I said anything. Actually, the podcast movement almost always has its events at the worst time of year, Dallas in August. And I think it's because the hotels are cheaper, to be honest with you. It's easier to
given the economics of podcasting,
that's really what I think you're seeing here. Yeah, exactly. We'll have more with our great panel. Larry Magid is here, Allyn Malventano, and, of course, Paris Martineau. You're watching This Week in Tech. Our show today brought to you by Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution. Panoptica provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. Panoptica empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring, and it does it at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. You're going to love Panoptica. It's powered by graph-based technology. Their attack path engine prioritizes and offers dynamic remediation for vulnerable attack vectors, helping security teams quickly identify and remediate potential risks across cloud infrastructures. Panoptica is a unified cloud-native security platform, and unified's great because it minimizes gaps that you might have when you have multiple solutions. It provides centralized management and an easy-to-use interface and reduces non-critical vulnerabilities from fragmented systems or systems that are hard to understand. Panoptica, it utilizes advanced attack path analysis, root cause analysis, and dynamic remediation techniques to reveal potential risks from an attacker's viewpoint. That's nice, because then you can identify new and known risks. You can emphasize critical attack paths. You can emphasize their potential impact, and then you can fix it. Panoptica provides several key benefits for businesses at any stage of cloud maturity: advanced CNAPP, multi-cloud compliance, end-to-end visualization, the ability to prioritize with precision and context, dynamic remediation, and increased efficiency with reduced overheads. Are you ready to learn more? Visit panoptica.app. You'll find out everything you need. Actually, we're looking at it right now. It's a really, really interesting product. Panoptica, panoptica.app. Panoptica, thank you so much for your support for This Week in Tech. Interesting security news for you here, Allyn Malventano. Apple has been asked by Russia to block 25 VPN apps. And actually, this happened in China before. I mean, this is the problem with being a multinational. Why would Russia want to block VPN services?
I'm assuming this is so their own citizens.
From their own citizens, of course. Yeah.
We wouldn't want the population to have the idea of
information that we don't control. Yeah,
it's just like one step away from North Korea. No problem.
Reuters says demand for VPN services soared in Russia after Putin ordered troops into Ukraine in 2022. And immediately after that, by the way, authorities restricted access to Western social media. Not all of it, but most of it. Roskomnadzor, which is a name Steve Gibson loves to pronounce. That's the Russian state's communication watchdog, their FCC. Roskomnadzor reported on Thursday that 25 VPN apps have been removed from the Apple App Store in Russia. 25.
What's real funny is, number one, Apple complied, right?
Yep.
Number two, the really funny part of that, or I should say ironic part of that, is you can bet your bottom dollar the government is using VPNs aplenty.
Yeah.
And as well as many government actors doing, the things that the Russian hacker community does.
I was in China about 10 years ago. And at that time, you could still use a VPN. I think I had ExpressVPN or something like it on my laptop. And the rationale, what I was told by our guides was, the government understands that the elites will know how to use and will have access to VPNs. They're not trying to protect the elites from the outside world. It's the peasants. It's the mass of people that they don't want communicating. But this has been a big change now because, of course, iPhones in both China and Russia are owned by the elites.
Yep.
So I think this is a very much of a change in how this is viewed, that they need to keep the elites as ignorant as they have for a long time kept everybody else.
Well, I mean, I would imagine that iPhones have, if you probably looked at some chart over time of just like any other technology, right? I would imagine that, years back, it was probably just the elites, but I would think that more and more of the general populace.
It's so expensive though, right? Or maybe
I know. Yeah. But think about it. You get older ones, you get a used one, a couple of years old, same as anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I would imagine it's in the hands of more. It's probably not limited to just the elites at this point over there.
Well, certainly smartphones in general.
In general.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw smartphones in very, very poor parts of Africa.
Mostly Android, though, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, mostly Android.
Yeah.
And I don't know I'm not sure what's happening on the Play Store side of things, whether Google's gotten a similar order.
Well, right. I mean, they might have went for Apple first, and then
I'm
they're
sure
going to use that to try to convince Google.
The irony is you can buy Apple's Vision Pro in Russia. Not legitimately, but a former official Apple reseller sells them. They are the equivalent of $6,300, almost 50% more than they cost in the U.S. Apple says, no, we don't sell them, but apparently people can get them, and there's a market for it, right? Apple has supposedly departed the Russian market. Sort of. Sort of.
There's a lot of.
It's hard if you're an international company. You have to follow the laws of the countries that you're in, right? That's why Google famously left China, because they didn't want to comply.
I was in Moscow in 2012, and I visited the Google office. They had a huge office in Red Square, beautiful office. And at that point, we're doing well in China. I don't know how they're doing now in Russia.
It's hard to abandon these countries because for Apple, China is a huge, important part of its revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Not to mention where the phones are manufactured, I believe.
Right.
So.
Let's see. I'm still looking for news. I'm looking for news. I am.
Well, there was another Russian hacking story in here.
All right. Russian hacking. Let's stay with Russia. Which one was that?
Microsoft tells Texas agencies they were exposed to the Russian hack.
Look, I am stunned by Microsoft's kind of indifference to their security issues. They had massive problems with the Exchange server, which they kind of ignored for months. I don't know if this is related, but Microsoft has told a dozen state agencies and public universities in Texas that Russian state-sponsored hackers accessed emails between Microsoft and the software and the Texas agencies, the Texas Department of Transportation, the Texas Workforce Commission, Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, Texas General Land Office, and the State Securities Board. Now, I'm thinking that this is because Microsoft's email was breached, because they say emails between Microsoft and these Texas agencies. So maybe it's not a huge issues. You know, it's not like they got into the DMV and got everything. But still,
yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that correspondence would be, but it is weird because back when I was in that, in the cybersecurity community as part of my day job, the Russian stuff was always like folks just trying to get money.
Right.
Back then, it
now
wasn't so.
I think it's
it wasn't so
governmental, isn't
politics.
it? It's more governmental.
Yeah. Now it's all government and politics backed. It almost seems to like they don't care about the money at all anymore.
Yeah.
From my perspective, and it's just immediately shifted.
What seems to have happened in Russia is there's state-sponsored hacking, which is political and espionage, and then they countenance a lot of hacking groups that mostly do ransomware. Almost all of them come out of Russia, and they're not being in any way thwarted by the Russian police. They're turning a blind eye to it. We're going to pause here for just a moment because Larry has lost his video.
Ooh.
And doesn't know it. There he is.
There we go. Sorry about that. I think I turned it off during the break and forgot to turn it back on.
Larry has turned a blind eye towards ransomware in Russia as well, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, not that much to look at. I look much better on radio anyway, so.
I have a face for radio too, Larry. I know all about it. All about it.
So, Leo, I have a pet peeve to share.
Yes.
And this is not news to anybody, but I bought a GE refrigerator about a year ago, and it's a great refrigerator. And I just got the filter light came on to replace the filter. And it turns out there's a chip in the filter, right? So when I went on Amazon and I looked for compatible filters, they started at about $19. But the one with the chip in it is from GE, and that starts at about $60.
Oh, God.
And why isn't there a law? I mean, what reason could you possibly have a chip in a water filter? I could understand maybe in a printer, but in a water filter?
Well,
you wouldn't want to use a non-genuine.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use a part that would deprive GE of revenue.
Even though
and GE's lobbyists would never want a law to be passed like that.
Larry, exactly. I have the same refrigerator, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You have to buy these expensive water filters. And
there are hacks. I'm reading on Reddit. There are hacks I can do.
Of course there are.
But do I really want to hack my refrigerator?
Yeah.
How often do you go through a water filter on this?
Well, no, that's another issue. The machine says it's expired, right? But according to Reddit, that expiration is bullshit as well because it's the chip telling me. What is that? How does it know it's expired? It's because they need the revenue, right? It's time for them to.
It's time for more revenue. Yeah.
Exactly.
Someone figured out how to make a refrigerator a subscription product.
Exactly.
They got a big bonus.
Exactly.
There's nothing.
The real kicker.
Go ahead.
The real kicker to that is some folks install whole house water filtration like I did.
Right. And you don't need a water filter
and
on
that
your
filter
fridge.
is never gonna. Yeah, that filter's never getting clogged. Right.
You know what they do sell, and I had the same thing, and I think I had in GE a dummy that goes in the water filter slot and never wears out. So look for that,
Larry.
Filter? No, it doesn't filter. It just passes the water through.
Yeah, and of course, Palo Alto has pretty clean water.
Yeah, you don't need a water filter.
Sure you need a filter. Yeah. But it just really annoyed me to think, and I did order one because, after all, God forbid I should feed my family unfiltered water for a day.
GE does need the money, that's for sure.
Yeah. Probably.
No, but of course, this has been a long-standing practice in printers, right? With inkjet,
right? Exactly.
Inkjet cartridges,
right?
What's interesting is there was a backlash, at least in printers, and you may remember Epson, because Canon and all the others. Canon was bad, but was it Lexmark? All the companies that were they said, the printer's cheap, but we're going to charge you through the nose for the ink, and you've got to use ours. Epson's response was, well, we're going to make tanks that you just fill the tank. And so there was a backlash to it. And I think Epson did quite well with their tanks.
And I had one of those, and the tanks were very cheap.
Right.
And they worked just fine. It was as good a printer as most inkjet printers are. And of course, they charge more for the printer. That was
they have to, because they don't have additional revenue every few weeks from the inkjet cartridges. I think that's there. To me, that's a good sign. It shows that consumers, if they become aware, they can and they're careful. You can, with your dollar, at least with your dollar vote, you can convince companies there's a better way. Epson, I think, is very happy with those tanks, and I notice that the other companies are starting to adopt tanks as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe there's hope. Maybe if all the people who buy, see, that's the problem. A refrigerator is something you don't buy all that often.
Right. No, but it's a good point. It's like, one of the things that annoyed me with cars now is that, they typically have some subscriptions. And your point, Paris, is interesting because so many things these days, remember we used to buy software, now you pay an annual fee, and over a 10-year period, you're going to pay at least $1,000 for your Microsoft Office subscription.
Yep.
Which is a lot for a piece of software.
Great for Microsoft, though.
Great for them. And for a software product, it's so mature that there's actually no reason why most people need an upgrade. They may need security updates, but I'm perfectly happy with the version of Microsoft Office I had 5 years ago.
Well,
it still works.
The way we used word processors in 2005 is very different from the way we use. Oh, no, it isn't. Not at all. Not in the least.
Nope. Still typing
all right.
things in
as
there.
long as we're piling
they do
on.
have AI. They do have AI for what that's worth.
There is an article in the notes
now
about that.
Clippy can do generative AI or whatever.
Yeah. Clicky can tell me how to write.
As long as we're piling on Microsoft, we might as well bring up what Microsoft's head of AI said the other day. Let me see if I can find the article here. This is from Windows Central, and they're quoting Mustafa Suleyman. He was speaking at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and he said, when asked about AI training itself on content from the web, he said, with respect to content that's already on the open web, the social contract of the content since the 90s has been that it's fair use. Anyone can copy it, recreate with it, reproduce with it. That's been freeware, if you like. That's been the understanding.
What?
He is the head of Microsoft's AI and basically says, hey, if it's on the open web, it's fair game. What do you think?
For a company that makes its entire living on copyrighted content?
I know, isn't that hysterical?
I mean, you can you can go to Microsoft and you can download the Windows ISO. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, I guess sure.
There it is.
Windows is fair game now.
Oh, it is.
All right, cool.
Come to think of it, it's downloadable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
OpenAI has been sued, and of course, Microsoft, a big partner of OpenAI, by U.S. publishers and the New York Times, all of whom saying you can't eat our content for free. I have mixed feelings about that. As we were talking about this earlier on Ask the Tech Guys, it is the case. I don't think that you want an AI that's only trained on, Charles Dickens, right? You want an AI to be trained on everything it can get its hands on. And it's not like they're copying.
But that doesn't mean that private companies have a right to everyone else's copyrighted content just because it would make their product better.
Well,
on the other hand, where does fair use play into this? And what is, for example, if you were to ask me a question like, I don't know, who won an election? And I'm taking the politics and the misinformation. I would say,
what time is the Super Bowl? That's a much safer.
Yeah, what time is the Super Bowl? Okay, what time is the Super Bowl? I don't have a direct line to the NFL that's telling me what time the Super Bowl is. I know what time it is because I read it in the newspaper. I know it from some third-party source. Is that not fair use? I mean, it's a fact. At what point should we restrict the dissemination of general information simply because some copyright source happened to report on it? I mean, the New York Times, yes, their articles are and should be copyrighted. I used to write for the New York Times, but if they're news stories, the information in those articles came from some other place. The New York Times didn't invent the facts that they're reporting on. So why shouldn't you and I have a right to repeat those facts? And is ChatGPT any different than you and I in that regard if it's simply repeating those facts that it happened to pick up in a New York Times article.
By the way, there is a website.
Really interesting.
There is a website. Whattimeisthesuperbowl.net.
Okay. Well, where did they get that information from?
In case you want to really know.
Okay.
But the reason I mentioned it is this was like one of the top SEO topics of last January, because that is a very, very common search. And every website in the world, including the big ones, are desperate to get that traffic to that page because they have ads on there and it makes them money. Go ahead, Paris. I cut you off a little bit.
Oh, I was just saying we have this debate on This Week in Google all the time. And I feel like it kind of boils down to, yes, the information, say, in like a New York Times article isn't solely owned by the New York Times. If it reports it, other news outlets will. People will talk about it and share that. It doesn't just exist within the pages of the New York Times. But I think, and maybe it's a semantic difference or maybe it's a real difference, but what is going on when that is integrated into a large language model like ChatGPT is the text of that article is being used to train that large language model. And I think that's in some ways a bit different than someone, rewriting a story for their web page. It is going to train a model that is the primary product of a for-profit or non-profit, within a for-profit if you're talking about OpenAI ChatGPT entity. And that feels a little bit ickier to me.
And this goes back to the whole debate between News Corp and Google News. I mean, and other entities, other publishers who simply objected to linking to stories with a little snippet. I mean, there's a whole industry, lawyers protesting things that I rely on every day as part of my online searching and news acquisitions. And yes, I do subscribe to many, not all, of course, but a number of paid publications. But I love Google News. And I
just asked ChatGPT 4.0 what time the Super Bowl was, and it gave me the time for for the last Super Bowl, and it says typically the exact kickoff time is typically around 6:30. So it's really hedging the answer here, and when in fact it probably could know exactly what time it was on February 11th, 2024, since it's gone. But so don't ask AI that kind of thing. I think Suleiman is not wrong, but I think he's also saying something that is definitely going to raise the hackles of everybody who hears it. People are going to say, well, no, you can't. But if you publish it on the internet, unless it's behind a paywall, you're allowing everybody to read it and interpret
Copyright
it.
Still implied.
Well, and now all of these same people are saying if it's behind a paywall, it's actually fine for us to scrape it as well, so long as we have a login or your
we paid
paywall
for
doesn't
it.
have a robot stock text exclusion for scraping. And I think that that's a little ridiculous.
So does it violate copyright, Larry? If I can read it, that doesn't violate its copyright. If I copied it, But news stories are copied all the time, as Jeff Jarvis is always saying on Twig. I mean, anything that happens, there's 12 different news stories about it, all regurgitating the same basic information.
You can't copyright a fact. You can copyright the condition of how that fact is described.
Exactly.
And so when I go to ChatGPT and I ask, who is Leo Laporte, it's going to tell me who Leo Laporte is based on whatever, I imagine Wikipedia, your own website, articles written about you, etc. But presumably the words, the way it phrases it, will be unique.
Right.
And so how is that different than if somebody asked me who is Leo Laporte? I don't have an intrinsic way of knowing. I know who Leo Laporte is because I've read about him, and in my case, I have to know you.
You're regurgitating all of that same information, essentially.
Of course I am. Every time I write an article. I mean, unless I saw it with my own eyes.
So what makes it different when an AI does it?
Well, do we think that a AI should have the same intrinsic rights as a human being? I don't think we should. I think that it's a slippery slope.
You probably don't think corporations have First Amendment rights.
I mean,
I'm joking.
Yeah, probably not.
That's the
thing that gets me about it is that out of certain AIs, you'll get a confident answer about a thing that it's completely wrong on. And so,
I mean, they know nothing.
Just like humans. Just like humans. I never stop to ask directions because I don't trust them.
But the thing is, the AI, because I know because of my day job now, we also do AI things, and so I've had to study up on how the technology all works. And an inference engine, an AI inference engine, it knows what the confidence actually is. But do they tell you? No. So in other words, like there are numerical values associated with what the inference, like what next words the inference is pulling and how confident it was to get to the response that you got. And that stuff is not surfaced, and I kind of wish it was. Because that would be very helpful, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Why doesn't it have a percentage, 38% confidence or 20? Or that's interesting, huh?
Hi, this is Benito.
Right.
They should all do that. Like, why?
Why don't they do that? Yeah.
Well, I'd assume it's because in many cases it does not know whether or not it's accurate, because it is in many ways just stringing words together and doesn't know the actual meaning of it.
I mean,
but it's a lot more accurate than most people think it is. Now, I'm not saying it's not wrong a lot of times. I was very pleased when ChatGPT gave me an Emmy. Unfortunately, I haven't actually gotten one, but it made an inference that maybe I had one. But more or less, I'm surprised at how accurate it actually is most of the time. It's a little bit like my full self-driving, my Tesla. Most of the time it gets me safely to where I'm going. It's still once in a while it's wrong.
By wrong, you mean a drunk teenager all of a sudden.
Exactly. No, but seriously, with ChatGPT, and of course we at Connect Safely, we wrote the parents guide for ChatGPT. And in all disclosure, OpenAI is one of our supporters, as is Google, as is some other companies in this field. But most of the time, in my experience, it gets it kind of right.
Yes, I agree.
And
it's mostly right.
I guess what I'm saying is, in Paris, back to your point about, should corporations profit from it? That's an important question, but I don't want to lose it. I mean, I don't want to go back to, back all the way to 2023 when I didn't have this technology, because I've come to depend on it. I mean, and I'm not talking about professionally. As a consumer, as a health consumer, as a traveler, I find it incredibly useful in my life. And
so Google has always, and OpenAI and Apple and Microsoft have always said, we will honor a website's request to block it. Usually, I think using robots.txt, you can say in your robots text, which is normally used to block spiders, web search engines from crawling your site. You can also say no AI. But Cloudflare has said that it, in fact, many bots do not honor that robots.txt. So they have actually announced a new product available to everybody who uses Cloudflare, even the free Cloudflare, to block AI bots. And the way they do it is they think they can detect when a crawler is an AI or not. So they have a mode that will automatically detect AI bot activity. AIs apparently don't read the same way you and I do, and block it. When looking at the number of requests made to Cloudflare sites, they write, we see that ByteSpider, Amazon Bot, Claude Bot, and GPT Bot are the top 4 AI crawlers, owned respectively by TikTok, that's ByteSpider, obviously Amazon, Claude is Anthropic, and GPT Bot is of course ChatGPT, OpenAI.
Wired had a really interesting investigation a couple of weeks ago that kind of involved both their investigation and one carried out by a developer that suggested that Perplexity is
stealing
able to kind of
stuff.
Get the results that it does by completely ignoring the robots exclusion protocol to surreptitiously scrape areas of websites.
Yes, I saw that story. I thought that was very interesting. And that, we love Perplexity. Do you love Perplexity? I seem to think you do.
I mean, I don't particularly use any of these
you don't?
services that often.
I feel like you and I, or maybe it was Jeff, we seem to
Jeff
talk about
loves Perplexity.
He loves Perplexity.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I don't have any strong feelings either way towards it. I use the internet in such a maniacal way sometimes that using a third-party chat or search bot is counterproductive to me.
Right.
I need to open 300 tabs.
I think there's a way forward. Oh, yeah, I feel you on the 300 tabs. Trust me. I think there's a way forward. There's something missing. If you try to compare this, we've compared this with like news, like what news organizations do, and you'll have somebody will break a story, like New York Times will break a story, and then you'll have 10 other, major news sites. But the thing is, they're citing the New York Times as their source.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, it is technically possible to train like ChatGPT if they wanted to.
They should.
They could provide the top 2 or 3 highest influences when they did the training of their model. They could have some extra metadata that you could sort of backwards track. Okay, where were the highest influences for this particular response? Where did they come from? Right. It is technically possible. I don't know if they could technically do it right now, but like it is a thing that could be possible.
Perplexity does do that.
Perplexity does this.
That's what's interesting about Perplexity.
Okay.
Yeah, they do.
So here, I just searched for the health benefits of dark chocolate, and these are links at the top above its analysis to sources, and then within the analysis, they will have, you see these little footnotes. They'll have little footnotes to each point. That's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is where did you get this from?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a user, I really, and that's how I want. Basically, if I'm going to act on anything I learn on AI, I'm going to want verification. I'm going to want to see something written by a person or an organization that I trust that says, what it is that I'm going to act on. And so, to me, that solves a lot of the problem. If you have
But
not only does it give you the... Oh, go ahead.
Here's what Elizabeth Lopato says in The Verge, Perplexity's grand theft AI. More like perfidy than perplexity. She says Perplexity, which, by the way, is at this point trying to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, is trying to create a search competitor. But it's not creating a search engine, it's creating an answer engine. And that is true. When you just saw the Perplexity search results I gave you, that you could follow a link, but honestly, all the information you wanted was right there on that page. She says Perplexity is basically a rent-seeking middleman on high-quality sources. This is that same link tax argument we've been seeing all along.
The Google thing that happened.
Yeah.
The Google thing that happened years ago, even before it was AI driven.
Yeah.
Right. When Google was giving you part of the parsed out, content of one of the sources as part of the top of the search results. Right. It wasn't AI interpreted yet back then. This was years ago.
Right.
But yeah, there were court cases about that, and they were going in front of weren't there even congressional inquiries on it, and they had to answer for that action as well.
I think this comes from that move fast and break things philosophy that Silicon Valley has had for years now, which is it is far better to apologize than to ask for permission. So they just go ahead and do it. And if we get in trouble, we'll work it out later. We'll figure it out.
I do wish more AI, if all of the AI things was doing what Perplexity looks like it's doing, if they were doing it from the very beginning, I think this conversation would be very, very different today. And there wouldn't have been so much opposition, right? Because when you have so many different AI things out there making images or giving you prompt results, things like that, with zero references, zero citations, nothing, it just came from that thing like magic. Everybody's going to take offense to that if they're a generator of that content that was used, right?
Well, I don't know, Paris, you're a generator of that content.
The question I always have about these like large language models and generative output machines is what is the end game? Assuming something like Perplexity becomes successful, let's say in their wildest dreams, everything works. Everybody uses Perplexity instead of Google search. They are looking for answers like what we just showed instead of kind of combing through all these links. In 5-10 years, what is going to happen? Because if you
run
have
out
a
of
world,
content.
I mean, if you have a world where all of it is just you have users coming to your site to look at your content and not going away to where the content is coming from, no one is going to be creating content to feed into that machine. It seems just incredibly short-sighted. And this is also a business model that as of right now, I don't think has any, they're not making money.
No, they're not. That's why they're trying to raise money. But you're right. In the long run, if you cannibalize all your sources, there won't be any sources left. And then what? Then what do you do?
Well,
then you trust the AI to train itself, and then you end up with Terminator.
All right, let's take a little break. You're listening to This Week in Tech. Paris Martineau from The Information, who is often plagiarized but never equaled. That could be your slogan if you want to.
That could be. I'll try it out.
Yeah. Allyn Malventano from Phison. He's an SSD technology expert. He's the guy I go to when I want to know how SSDs work. Longtime editor at PC Perspective, host of This Week in Computer Hardware. Great to have you. And Larry Magid from connectsafely.org. We're talking about the week's news in tech, and we'll have more in just a bit. Our show today brought to you by ExpressVPN. It's the only one I use, the only one I trust. So when we travel, it is often the case we travel outside the United States. We would like to watch a show that is only available in the U.S. How do I do it? I fire up ExpressVPN. It works both ways, though. You know, Netflix has more than 18,000 titles worldwide, but only a third of those are available in the U.S. Now, if you pay for Netflix, you can use ExpressVPN to find the rest of those titles in other countries. Here's how it works. ExpressVPN, by the way, the best VPN out there, absolutely privacy-focused, has servers all over the world. And you can say, when you fire up ExpressVPN, when you press that big button that says Protect Me, you can say where you want to be. Do you want to be in Canada to watch Friends on Netflix? Netflix hides content based on your location. But when you're using ExpressVPN, your online location is whatever ExpressVPN server you're on. You want to watch Fargo on ExpressVPN? You just select a country where it's available, Canada, Mexico. Connect, refresh, there it is. With servers in over 100 countries, there's pretty much nothing you can't watch on ExpressVPN. Not just Netflix, but Disney Plus, BBC iPlayer, and more. It's one of the reasons I like ExpressVPN. They invest in their infrastructure. They rotate their IP addresses. They protect your privacy. They don't log. And they go the extra mile to make sure that all of that works best. Now, sure, you could save money and get a free VPN, but you won't get any of those benefits. More likely, what you're going to get is a privacy nightmare. So it's worth a little less than $7 a month to get the best VPN, ExpressVPN. It's easy to use. It works on all your devices, your phones, your laptops, your tablets, even smart TVs. You can even have, we're talking about whole home water filtering. You can have whole home VPN filtering. ExpressVPN sells routers. They work on many routers. You can put it on the router, and then your whole home is protected. And because ExpressVPN invests in its infrastructure, it's fast enough to watch HD video. That means nobody in the house is going to complain. Blazing fast feeds. #1 rated by CNET and The Verge. ExpressVPN keeps you private and secure, rerouting all your traffic through an encrypted tunnel. So be smart. Stop paying full price for streaming services and only getting an access to a fraction of their content. Plus, protect your privacy and your security. Get your money's worth at expressvpn.com/twit. Now, when you use our special link, expressvpn.com/TWIT, you'll get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free when you buy a 1-year package. That brings the price down below $7 a month. Believe me, it's worth it. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. Back to the non-existent tech news of the week. Although I was interested to read the
Leo,
health
you're doing
benefits
such a bad job of selling this episode.
I know.
You
I'm
opened it
terrible.
and have repeated 2 or 3
terrible.
times. There's
I know.
nothing going
There's
on.
nothing
this
happening.
week.
All right. There is something that I wanted to ask Allyn about. This happened last week. We talked a little bit about it last week. But Allyn, you're from the intelligence community. You've worked as an NSA contractor, which is what Edward Snowden was. I'm just curious what you think about Julian Assange. As you probably know, he pled out. He pled guilty with 1 count of espionage in court last week, and the 5 years that he served hiding out in a UK jail are now it. He's released. I think he's going back to Australia. He did have to plead guilty to espionage while denying that he ever engaged in espionage. As you know, and I think probably everybody remembers, he, among other things, enticed Chelsea Manning to release video footage of a drone strike on civilians, which he then published on WikiLeaks. He got in trouble, though, I think partly because of that, but also partly because he got the Russian hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee, those on WikiLeaks, and it is believed that in both cases he enticed the espionage. So that's catching you up to the latest story. But now he's free. What do you think?
I mean, they did a plea agreement, so it seems like the government side is satisfied. Right?
Yeah, this is a lot of journalists said he was being a journalist. He was doing the right thing as a journalist, and the government's punishing him because he published things that were embarrassing to the government, chiefly the Chelsea Manning documents.
Not to try to defend one way or the other, but if it's confidential stuff, it's not supposed to go online. Now, granted, the government shouldn't be doing things.
Manning went to jail, but remember, Obama commuted her sentence.
Right. But yeah, I mean, journalists are not, I don't know, my take on that is the line should be, hey, if it's confidential information, you shouldn't release it. Like
all
that.
Right.
But
you're not old enough to remember, but I know Larry and I are old enough to remember the Pentagon Papers.
Right. It was in public interest.
Right. And that's my other side to that argument, though, is that the government needs to be doing better.
Yeah.
So that those things don't happen in the first place. Right.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, as for the work I was doing, I was trusted with secrets that, bad things would happen if those secrets got out. Right. And they weren't necessarily that the government was doing anything bad or good. It was just like the fact of whatever these, items are, if they're released to the public, that will do harm.
Should Edward Snowden be offered a plea deal?
I'm kind of surprised he wasn't.
He did. It seemed to me that he did everything he could to bring the matter to the attention of his higher ups. They didn't care that the NSA was spying on American citizens, so they ignored him, and that's why he released the information. And by the way, attempted to release the information in a way that was fairly responsible.
Well, the issue with Snowden was that it wasn't that the spying was occurring. It's that there's this gray area of, okay, you have to have a system in place that can collect some sort of, things going across a wire, right? Now, technically, you can consider that is spying. However, the NSA has a system that's before Snowden's revelations was that system has an awful lot of checks and balances on it, to where if anybody wants access to any of that information to be able to query it, then they have to have warrants, all those sorts of things that you need in place. The only difference is that the information is technically there, but still inaccessible to, you can't just willy-nilly search the thing. Now, what Snowden's revelations was that, oh, wait, there's this effective back door in the system where if you happen to work in IT, you're off to the side of all of those checks and balances within the system, right? I wasn't working in IT when I was there. I was on the other side of it. And any query I did or anybody under me, I had to audit them. There were all these audits and everything.
To keep the information of American citizens out of the data flow, basically.
Correct. To keep it inaccessible.
Yeah.
And
because the NSA's charter is not to spy on citizens, but to collect information overseas. But of course,
and
it's all mixed up.
The catch is that, yes, it's all mixed up. The catch is that sometimes you have a foreign person on one side of the wire and you have a domestic person on the other side of the wire. And that the technology is not good enough to be able to only filter it one way like that. It doesn't go that way. Right. Yeah.
It's interesting. The NSA did have lots of checks and balances. So, but he was able to show that they weren't fully effective.
Right. And honestly, me in his position would have probably gone through the same steps. I don't know if I would have gone all the way to his ultimate step that he took, but I would have certainly been raising flags and, hey, this is not proper. This is, and there are systems in place within the military and within the NSA to make those sorts of reports.
He claims he did all of that and it was ignored. So, yeah. How about Assange? Assange is not quite as clear cut because he claims to be a journalist, and yet there's some evidence that he had a Russian cutout Guccifer and knew it was a Russian espionage job on the DNC emails,
Yeah.
and that didn't bother him. That he helped Chelsea Manning exfiltrate that information. He helped her understand how to get around a skiff, things like that.
Right.
That's
right.
going
As
beyond
soon
what a
as-
journalist will do. That's right, Larry. You can't, as a journalist, if Daniel Ellsberg comes to you and says, "Here are the Pentagon Papers," the Washington Post, New York Times, and if you've seen the movies, you know they agonized over this, but ultimately released it.
Right.
But they did not suborn, anybody.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
They did not
As I
offer money to
understand it-
Daniel Ellsberg and say, "Here, give me that information." It was given to them.
If somebody came to me with hacked information and I believed it, I believe I would have the right to publish that information, but I could not hack or pay them or in any way, as you say, suborn the actual hacking act. But to simply regurgitate the information, I believe is not against the law.
This is something I deal with a lot whenever I'm working with sources. Obviously not usually with hacked information,
Right.
but it's something we have to have a discussion with the information with our lawyers and editors all the time. Is
Yeah.
you can't induce people to break their NDAs or
Right.
confidentiality agreements. You can't say, "Hey, I'd love for you to share company documents with me on X, Y, and Z." You have to, say like, "Hey, is there any sort of like supporting evidence to this? I'd love to see some." And
Right,
if
but
you're like,
if
"Oh,
your
do you
source-
want a specific document?" And you can't really say, "Yes, give me that," and break your NDA.
Right.
It has
Right.
to happen to you.
Right. If
There
your
is a-
source came to you and said, "Hey, I'm under NDA with Google and you should know that they're about to do XYZ," could you then publish that information that source
There's a-
came to you and
Yes.
said?
Yeah. I mean, I would probably.
And would
have
you
a
go to jail to
conversation with
protect
them.
the identity of that person?
I would go to the jail. I would go to jail to protect the identity of my sources. Yeah.
Good.
That's a bargain I make as a journalist.
Right.
There's a good analogy to this that just happened a day or two ago. Gamers Nexus. Anybody following
Mhm.
that
No,
story?
what's that?
Right. I don't know if it made it in the show notes or not, but just off the top of my head, Gamers Nexus got a tip from one of their viewers, and it was someone with a unique enough name where they Googled their own name, and they had done an RMA with Zotac for some product, and their name popped up, and it was like all of their PII about that RMA was right on some site related with Zotac. And then Gamers Nexus, like Steve, started Googling around just like, okay, well, let's see, is there just other information out there? And starts uncovering lots and lots of things. However, journalistic integrity as well, right? Made attempts behind the scenes to correct it, and made sure to not even report on it until a majority of the content had already been taken down, right? So there's like a right way to go about doing that. Now, the flip side to that, we were just talking about, was he obviously didn't help them like hack into anything. Like that's where you cross the line, right? Yeah, that was an interesting story though.
How interesting.
They're doing.
Yeah,
It's
and-
interesting because they have been in the past, well known for reviews, YouTube and so forth. But it looks like they're doing more investigative stuff. They just had a story on Asus and the lousy job Asus was doing with customer support. That's, I think, kind of interesting. Right. This is a new thing for them.
Yeah, they had a couple of stories. I don't remember which one it was that sort of put them on the map for this, but I mean, Steve's pretty good at being a very strong advocate for the customer,
yeah, good
right,
for
the consumer.
Yeah.
If it's anything consumer related, and even in his regular reviews, he's always very, very adamant about consumer perspective, right? Sort of the same thing we used to do back in the day at PC Per, right? The same sort of thing. Try to keep that mindset. Steve's probably even better than I was, back then at doing that particular thing. It's definitely one of his superpowers. And yeah, so I think because of that, he's sort of become this, where people will go to, right? If they see something weird that's like a consumer,
interesting.
Suffering for,
so he gets tips as a result.
The tips end up going to him because he's one of the biggest lightning rods for that sort of thing now.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think he handled that properly?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was at the San Jose airport and there was a technology executive sitting behind me talking very loud on his cell phone, giving me all sorts of information that I should not have had access to, confidential information. And as it turned out, I wasn't particularly interested in it, but I did turn around to him and say, just so you know, I'm a technology journalist, and I now know who you are, what you had to say.
Wow.
You might want to consider not talking so loud. But I thought about it, because I think I would have been fair use, right? I mean,
that's the sort of thing I literally dream about.
But you, unlike Larry, would have written up a story.
You would have.
I mean, if it was good, yeah.
Yeah,
it wasn't that interesting, but it was confidential. Yeah.
Wow. Here's some good news. Well, actually, it's not good news. Here's some bad news. NASA and SpaceX have misjudged the risks from re-entering space junk.
Okay, this is not surprising to me. Whenever we're talking about a bunch of junk floating around the Earth, I'm like, that seems bad. It's literally called space junk. Who thought that was going to be good?
Well, ideally, you would deorbit them in such a way that they land in a remote part of the Pacific Ocean. In fact, there is an area that is commonly where this stuff lands, but it's not a perfect system. In
Imagine
March,
being a fish living in the space junk part of the Pacific Ocean. Sorry, continue.
In March, a fragment from a battery pack, jettisoned from the space station, punched a hole in the roof of a Florida home. In May, a 90-pound chunk of a SpaceX Dragon fell on the property of a glamping resort in North Carolina. At the same time, a homeowner in a nearby town found a smaller piece of material that also appeared from the same Dragon mission. In April, another 90-pound piece of debris from Dragon landed on a farm in Saskatchewan.
It'd kill somebody.
It could. The good news is the Earth is a big place, and there's a lot of ocean. But apparently there is less attention being paid than maybe there ought to be. Here's the piece of this is not small. The piece of the Dragon spacecraft charred and burned from its reentry, found in a field in Australia in 2022. Yes, that's kind of a big chunk there.
Yeah.
So safety, this is the pull quote from Stephen Clark's article in Ars Technica. Safety tends not to be on the front burner until it really needs to be on the front burner.
Yeah, safety gets burned up whenever it's re-entering the atmosphere.
Marlin with going on junk falling from the sky.
Yeah. Marlin Sorge, who has an interesting job. He's the executive director of Aerospace's Center for Orbital and Reentry Debris Studies. It happens enough that there's a center for it. That's a sign. The biggest immediate need now is just to do some more work to really understand this whole process and be in a position to be ready to accommodate new materials, new operational approaches as they happen more quickly. Clearly, that's the direction spaceflight is going. We launched.
Can't we have
in the first?
Maybe we should just build a big cover that blots out the sky, so we're all protected from space junk.
Couldn't it be like waste management? They send trucks around my neighborhood to pick up the garbage. Couldn't Elon fly them around?
I think the Chinese actually have built a space junk garbage collector.
Right, exactly.
That goes around and picks up this stuff. I don't know what it does with it after it collects it, though.
Well, there's another thing to that, actually, is that there's enough space junk out there that it starts to make space, going to space
dangerous as well. That's right. That's, I think, what the Chinese are trying to collect it and keep it out of the way of their satellites. We've launched in the first half of 2024, the United States alone has launched 80 man-made objects into orbit.
That's a lot.
And what goes up must come down.
We have a lot of space junk and things in space.
There's a lot of space junk.
When you're thinking about how little time we've been putting stuff in space in comparison to human existence, it's concerning that this is already becoming a problem this early in the space experiment.
Here's the chart. Orbital launches in the first half of 2024 from Space Stats Online. We've launched 80. China's launched 29 satellites. Russia 8, Japan 3, India 2, Iran 1 or 2, and North Korea 1. That's 125 in the first 6 months of this year. 125 orbital launches. That's 125 things that eventually will have to come down. Now, most of the time, I think they burn up.
Yeah, they burn.
But as you know, not all the time.
What happened to that Tesla Elon Musk put in space?
They set that out. That's gone.
That's in a big orbit.
Where did it No.
It's it gets
Mars,
it gets close to Mars. Yeah.
It's going
What's
to
gonna
Mars.
I
happen?
don't like that. I don't like the idea that there's a Tesla close to Mars.
It's not supposed to land on Mars.
I don't listen. I feel like that's going to come back to haunt us. Just a loose Tesla out there in the great unknown.
Come on, the aliens got to have something to drive.
Now, I wonder if SpaceX has a map of some kind showing where the Tesla.
Is there a supercharger up
it's
there?
in. You can look up what the orbit is. It's in the trackers. It's in the celestial object trackers.
It's been 5 years. Here's a story from last year. It's been 5 years. So it's now 6 years since the cherry-colored sports car was launched into space. At the time, it completed about.
You can go to whereisroadster.com.
Oh my God!
Of course you can.
Oh my God! Oh, it is in an orbit though. You're right. It's going to come back eventually. Current location is 89 million miles from the Earth, moving away at a speed of 32,000 miles per hour. Whoa, pretty quick.
A fast Tesla.
Pretty quick. It's moving away.
Is it actually in this picture? It's actually flying around all by itself. It's not encapsulated in anything.
No,
it's just open.
No, it's just a loose Tesla out in space.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if it has full self-driving.
It's self-driving, all right.
It had of course, Elon's sense of humor. It had a battery playing David Bowie's Space Oddity over and over and over again to the spaceman in the Tesla. If the battery is still working, 636,000 times. And that's in one ear. And then in the other ear, is there life on Mars? 857,000 times. Fuel economy, 25,640.2 miles per gallon.
Wow. Can he include that in the stats, like when he averages out his fuel economy?
Really mileage.
On the entire fleet of Teslas?
This is a great website. This is so great.
No wonder he claims my car has more range than it really has.
Whereisroadster.com, and here is the you can actually the location plot. There it is. You're right.
Oh, yeah, it's an
Allyn.
animation.
It is an orbit.
Yeah.
In orbit around Mars or around
The sun.
That's in between both. I mean, yeah, it's like its own planet.
Its own orbit. Yeah, it crosses Mars.
I wonder what
orbit.
temperature it is at this point.
Well, let me see if they say that. They have any information about its current. Well, it's very cold, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to guess very cold.
Very cold. All right.
Because Teslas do have, you can get the Tesla app and figure the temperature of your car.
Yeah, like 400 degrees.
It has
it's close to
completed
the sun.
4.2 orbits around the sun, so it is in fact orbiting more slowly.
Could you put so that the orbit actually generates power to keep the battery going?
No.
Solar panel.
Yeah, but you could have panels, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no friction.
The space station gets its power.
All right, let's take a break. I bet when you tuned in today, you didn't think you'd learn about where the spaceman was, the Mars man. But thank you, Paris, for reminding me about all that. Our show today brought to you by NetSuite. The less your business spends on operations, multiple systems, and delivering your product or service, well, the more margin you have, the more money you get to keep. In order to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. It can be accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you have one unified business management suite. And you improve efficiencies by bringing all your major business processes under one roof, into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. No wonder over 37,000 companies have already made the move. Do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. By popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/twit. That's NetSuite, NETSUITE. netsuite.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. netsuite.com/twit. All right, enough about space junk. Let's see. Oh, good news. Are you a social media creator? You may get invited to the White House to meet with
Technically, we're being social media creators.
Yes, why are we not getting invited? They're going to have a conference for social creators. It is the very first White House Creator Economy Conference next month. The inaugural White House Creator Economy Conference will emphasize the administration's commitment to creators and their votes, and to reinforce the economic and cultural value they represent with their votes. The Office of Digital Strategy, there is such a thing, the Office of Digital Strategy has made work with digital creators one of our top priorities, said its director, Christian Tom, and we are excited to engage with creators on how these topics impact their lives and how they can help inform policy decisions and remind everybody that President Biden isn't that old.
I mean, I think this is just a strange choice to come on the heels of an administration that has moved to ban TikTok.
Banning TikTok.
Has moved to potentially advance bills like COSA and other kind of anti-social media and technology bans. It's very interesting to me that they're doing this. I mean, I guess it's also a one-day conference, so it's probably ultimately meaningless.
It is one of many contradictions. I mean, remember, Biden actually buys ads on TikTok.
It's very strange. And there are people who will be boycotting the event for that very reason. Who's going to get invited to this? It's a PR, right? And it's a perfect kind of PR because they're implying that, you people are so important, we're going to fill you in on our foreign policy. Because you need to know, when really it's just, please say nice things about us, please. We beg of you.
Biden needs all the help he can get right now.
Yeah, at this point, reaching out to the youngs, probably a good idea.
Yep.
It is now 1 year since Threads was launched. Have you used Threads? Anniversary was Wednesday. Threads was, of course, Meta's attempt to capitalize on the demise of Twitter. By the way, a demise has been greatly exaggerated. X seems to be surviving.
Yeah. Hasn't crashed and burned like many thought it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are, by the way, on X right now.
I always said it was absolutely silly. The people who, I think the week that Elon fired most
everybody.
Of Twitter's engineers.
Yeah.
But everybody was like, oh, the site's going to go down in days. That's not really how things work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm proud to say we are now streaming on X. In fact, if you go there, we're right at the top. So you can watch us on X. We have decided to start streaming everywhere we possibly can. And thanks to a website called Restream, which it makes it very easy. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're on X. We're on Kick. We're on Discord. I don't remember where else we are. Lots of places. Facebook. Somebody, and I see a chat interface that's all of the chat from all of those places mushed into one. And I saw somebody on Facebook saying, "I thought you were dead." So that was gratifying.
That's great.
Leo, you're still around, huh? Yes, I'm still here.
Well, they probably saw that AI generated funeral you made for yourself. So.
Fooled them, didn't I? Where was I? Oh yes, Threads has. Larry, I don't think I've ever asked you. Are you a Threads user?
I use it. I don't use it a lot, but I use it. I have a number of friends. I think Jeff Jarvis is there. Walt Mossberg is there.
Jeff is everywhere, though, right?
Paris?
Yeah, Jeff just copies and pastes.
He has one tweet he puts everywhere.
And I think I just configured my Facebook feed to automatically show up on Threads. I haven't checked to see if that's happening.
Can you do that?
I believe you can. I believe I did it. I believe you can do it.
How modern of you.
I know. Well, that's the problem is that at some point the gerontologists, who study Facebook are the only people who use Facebook. I'm hoping, I can start getting young people in their 60s and 70s to read my content by moving over to Threads.
Real whippersnappers.
Yeah, really. No, I don't know. I mean, I like Threads. I think that it is an opportunity it's an alternative to X. But like you, Leo, I haven't abandoned X. I mean, I don't use it as much personally as I used to, but Connect Safely uses it because there are still many people who can access our content there. And, we're very unhappy about what some of the things Elon has done, including kicking me off of the safety advisory board, actually abolishing the safety
you were
advisory
on the safety advisory board. That's right.
I was
forgot.
on. In fact, what really got me mad is I was on the verge of making a public resignation, and then he ended the board before I had a chance to resign.
That's so rude of
the
him.
wind out of my sails. But yeah, no.
You can't quit. You're fired.
Exactly. That's what he did to me. But, we're still there. And the thing about, people say it's a cesspool. And the thing about all social media is whether it's a cesspool kind of depends on where you are and who your social graph is.
Who you follow, yeah.
Who you follow. I don't see, for whatever reason, I guess I do follow Elon, and so I see his posts, and then
even if you don't follow him, you'll see his posts.
Even if probably so. But other than Elon and the people who comment on Elon, if I go down that far, I don't see that much crap on X because I don't follow crazy people who say crazy things. But I'm sure
one thing, though, that Threads has done, which is, I think, kind of interesting, X is filled with politics. It's at least on my feed, and again, it's very much who you follow, but it's almost all politics. Threads has decided not to do that, not to allow it. So they pretty much block political news, and so it's a very different experience. The reason it's in the news, besides the fact that it's its first anniversary, Mark Zuckerberg says that X has 175 million active users after 1 year. Now, that's still a fraction of the total number on Twitter. You disagree?
And I also think that's kind of an interesting number because we don't exactly know what that means. They say 175 million active, I think, is it monthly users?
Monthly active users.
Monthly active users. I'm curious, this is something I've talked a lot about with the Information's Meta reporter, and we've had a hard time getting to the bottom of it. What exactly does Meta count as a Threads active user? Does it count, for instance, if you scroll through your Instagram feed, you'll see Threads embedded in your Instagram feed, and sometimes I know I accidentally click a button.
You're a user, and you're a user.
So am I a user? Would I be a user? I know a couple of weeks ago I got a pop-up ad on Instagram that was hard to X out of, even for me, a person with nimble hands, that said automatically share all of your Instagram posts and stories to Threads.
Wow.
Are those people users?
Yeah, that's what I clicked on.
People who've enabled the same thing on Facebook users? I think it's interesting that it is that small of a figure comparatively to the users on Facebook and Instagram, which are in the billions. And that figure is also probably juiced a bit.
I notice the first thing I see when I open Instagram, Threads just got a makeover. You can now customize your open Threads at the very, very top of it. So, yeah, they're definitely using Instagram to promote Threads. And, in fact, if you do create a Threads account, it will be your Instagram sign-on. Right.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting. The Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz had an interesting story on Threads a couple days ago about how Threads has really struggled to win over content creators, in part because it kind of has no identity. Part of what I think makes Twitter a useful platform is you can use it to follow real-time like news events or like real-time just events generally, whether it's like a Super Bowl game or something happening in entertainment. Threads is makes that a bit more difficult. Both that they, ban politics, as we talked about before, but it's interesting in this article that Taylor wrote, she kind of digs into what Facebook has shared about Threads so far. Meta issued a report in the past week outlining the most popular tags in the platform over the last year, and it had more than 50 million tags. This is from the Washington Post. More than 50 million tags have been created since the platform's inception, but the 5 most popular were related to generic lifestyle topics: photography, books, gym workouts, art, and TTPD, the tag for Taylor Swift's Tortured Poet Department album.
Thank you for explaining that. I had no idea what TTPD was. Okay.
And it's just, I mean, that kind of suggests to me, those are incredibly basic terms. It suggests that it's more, you know,
it's what people
just
think
kind
about
of
it.
basic.
But that's good,
well,
isn't
if you
it?
look
Isn't
at
that what
if you
want
look
it
at the
to be?
top, but I mean, if you look at the top tags on a platform like TikTok or Twitter over a year, it's going to reference specific cultural moments or moments in news or things that are happening. That is kind of those basic words like books or gym workouts. That is kind of the most basic form of content possible. It just suggests that this platform hasn't really found a niche yet, which I think could be why so many people are finding it hard to kind of take to.
Yeah.
When you say that Threads bans politics, I'm looking at the feed of somebody called Politics Girl, who is talking about politics. So it's not completely banned from Threads. I mean, is it links to political stories or?
That's actually a good question. This is Adam. This is a quote from Adam
visibility
Mosseri.
of politics on Threads,
so it doesn't get surfaced. Mosseri said Threads is not going to do anything to encourage politics and hard news.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's in the algorithmic feed. Is Threads always algorithmic? It is, isn't it?
Yes, Threads. So Threads is, I believe, unless they've made a change since last time.
If I do my
went on
following,
Threads.
it's not. Following
This person is somebody I follow,
Yeah.
Like Threads by default, like Instagram, is an algorithmic feed.
Right.
And you can change it to be by following, which I assume will take it chronological. But most of how people are going to use a platform like Threads is you're scrolling through your equivalent of a For You feed, which has posts from people you follow, but then also posts from people you don't. And the posts that are surfaced to the average user are not going to include politics or links to hard news content, which is kind of what the difference is here. And that setting also applies to Instagram, which has made a lot of people quite mad online, that you will no longer, like, you'll be able to see a post about politics if it's by that politics girl that you follow. But if it's from someone else, even if it's going viral, it'll never come across your feed.
Which is funny because I remember when they made a big deal about how they were going to surface a lot of political information. They wanted to create a dialogue, kind of a town hall, community square. And I guess that didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah.
It did not.
Yeah.
It's funny. I maybe have just lost the taste for social media. None of it seems like it just seems like it's designed to annoy me.
Well, I'll give you an example. During the debate, that awful debate, I early on said, "Oh my God, is it just me or is it Biden blowing it?"
And that's how you know if you go to Meta or Threads.
It kind of validated my own sense that this was a disaster. I think I went to X. I went somewhere and I started seeing.
But that's the herd mind. Is that really what you wanted?
It did. At the time it was, because I thought I might have been going crazy.
Right.
I wasn't sure.
Right.
For a moment there, I wanted it. Now people were just jumping on the bandwagon, but it was helpful momentarily to know that it wasn't just me.
One thing I have noticed is X has become more and more like TikTok. Instagram has become more and more like TikTok. Everybody's trying to become a short video platform. I haven't used Threads enough to know if it's following down that path as well.
I think it's mostly text-based.
It's still mostly textual.
Obviously, the video aspect would be in Instagram, which is attached to Threads.
Right. And how about Blue Sky? That's the other Twitter wannabe. Is that still around? Is that? It's funny. I just really have lost interest in all of this.
Blue
stuff.
Sky is still around. I think they only somewhat recently rolled out like an in-app video player.
Actually, look at this. I mean, this is all images and video now. So I think that they very much, everybody all kind of looks the same now.
Mm-hmm.
Text is not
the thing that is interesting about Blue Sky is you can, right in the settings part of your feed or on a separate menu, change what your For You page shows you and kind of how the algorithm recommends it.
Oh, yeah, they have different lists.
Want
That's
fewer
right.
videos, things like that.
Yeah.
You have control over how it is recommended, which is something I wish I had on Twitter's For You page.
Right. Well, thanks to going to all three of these, I've learned that something's happened in France. I don't know what.
Yeah, there was that snap
There's an election
election
today.
Macron
Yeah.
poll that was supposed to move the country farther to the right, but I think the left ended up
It didn't happen.
snagging a narrow victory.
Oh, really? Oh, that's something.
See? Social media. It is good for something. Don't know what. How about this one? We were talking about the AI and the dangers of AI. There's a danger to AI that we talk about, but really is quite stunning. Google, which had an ambition of reaching net zero by the year 2030, has now admitted in their annual report, their environmental report on Tuesday, that the amount of energy that's being used by AI now has caused their greenhouse emissions to jump by almost half.
Wow.
Since 2019. Nearly 50% over 5 years, and they say it's AI. It's all the energy being used generating these LLMs, creating these LLMs, and then answering queries.
So have my house is entirely LEDs. My car is electric. I have no gas heater. Am I undoing all of that good stuff just by spending too much time on AI?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious I'd like to know every time. I pretty much know if I turn on a light for an hour, how much energy it uses. I would like to know how much energy my searching is using. I mean,
it's a larger question, which is, can individuals make a dent in all this?
That's what I'm pointing. Yeah.
Or is it really going to be up to companies like Google to solve this energy crisis, this pollution crisis? Google says we're still going to hit our 2030 zero emissions goal, but in the meantime, our energy use is going to go up.
Well, should there be a price? I mean, look, I don't get on airplanes just to cruise around. I get there because I want to go. But I have to admit, I'll spend hours on ChatGPT just, satisfying my curiosity about things that I really don't need to do.
But you never asked that about your Google searches either, which also used a significant amount of energy.
But I think not as much, though. I mean,
the estimated energy consumption of a Google search query is 0.0003 kilowatt hours.
Oh, okay.
OpenAI told the New Yorker that ChatGPT uses more than 500,000 kilowatt hours of energy or of electricity daily.
Wow!
I don't know even when that was.
A lot of that's going towards the training,
right?
Making the model in the first place.
But training never stops, right, Allyn? I mean, they're going to have to continue to train. It's not like, we got all the models now, we can just use them.
No, because they keep making larger and larger models.
Right.
It begs the question, though, of what is our individual responsibility? I mean, should we be thinking every time we do a search on one of these AI bots about what environmental impact we're having, or should we just not worry about that and leave that up to the Googles and the OpenAIs of the world to solve?
I mean, if you're thinking of it purely in terms of overall impact, I think that it would be much more effective to have these sort of restrictions on corporations or from a system level rather than zeroing in on the individual. It kind of feels like the greenhouse gas debate all the time. It's like, I think we were talking about this on This Week in Google this week. It's like, why can I not find a straw anywhere in Brooklyn, but yet however many kilowatts of energy are going to ChatGPT every single day?
Let me reassure you, Larry, with the words of Bill Gates. He says, energy-hungry AI systems are no cause for anxiety. Speaking
don't worry about it. He's not going to be impacted by any of the climate change.
He wants to build nuclear power plants in my neighborhood, though. So
yes, he does. Speaking last week in London, Bill Gates, he was talking at his company Breakthrough Energy Summit, urged people not to go overboard, Larry, on anxieties about the copious amounts of electricity that would be required to run new AI systems. And why? He says, well, AI will accelerate a more than 6% reduction. So he says
it'll all eventually work out.
AI is going to solve the problem. We should
just keep building your houses on stilts and sweating whenever you go outside because of the increased heat.
AI will be a help rather than a hindrance when it comes to achieving climate goals, because it's going to help us solve the problem.
Yeah,
we can't get Congress to listen to the humans. Do you think they're going to listen to the AI things?
Yeah, Gates is all over these. He's put billions into these tiny nuclear plants, right?
Right.
Yeah.
One near you?
Well, not that I know of, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I think right now it's a experimental in Wyoming, the TerraPower in Kemmerer, Wyoming. He's been. This is from Gates' notes. We just broke ground on America's first next-gen nuclear facility. Hello, says Bill Gates from Kemmerer, Wyoming. The idea is that this is a natrium plant, and it doesn't use, as I remember, it doesn't use water for cooling. It's a new way of creating emissions-free energy using nuclear power, but done very differently. So natrium, yeah. Let me see if I can find. The next generation of power is here, the natrium reactor and energy storage system. It uses sodium. It's a sodium fast reactor. Molten salt instead of water, I guess.
Yep. I know a thing or two about these things, Leo, although I didn't.
Oh, you are a nuclear engineer. Do you know about natrium? I forgot. We have an actual nuclear engineer here.
Well, the Navy's nuclear reactors are all water moderated.
Right.
So
as were all the traditional nuclear power plants. So you have you generate electricity because you have rods of fissionable material that you create a chain reaction, but you've got to keep the chain reaction from spinning. I remember this from a game on the Atari that I used to play a lot. Keep it from spinning out of control by putting something in between the rods. I guess.
Well, no, the rods are the thing that actually stops it.
Oh, the rods are slowing it down.
Yeah. The fuel cells have the fuel, and then the rods.
That's right. You scram. When you scram, you're dropping the rods in, right? To keep.
Remember? Wasn't that like a TWiT title from like 100 twits ago? The rods go down.
So wait a minute. Are you using salt water or fresh water to cool the reactors?
Oh, it has to be fresh water.
So you're not using.
You'll corrode the heck out of everything. Yes, not
so
only
you're
fresh
actually
water,
having to carry water on board. You can't use the water that you're floating in.
No, well, we can make pure water because we have a steam plant. We can just boil off water and then make pure water.
Okay. We should explain that you were the nuclear officer on a United States Navy submarine.
Yeah, I was a reactor operator, so it was like Homer Simpson, but on a submarine.
Yeah,
basically.
I hope better than Homer. So natrium reactors are not. Natrium sounds like a brand name, and it's not a chemical. They're not pressurized like existing plants, and use sodium instead of water as a coolant. The reactor operates at temperatures greater than 350 degrees Celsius. Wow, that's hot. But that's below the boiling point of sodium. So I guess that's why
that's the key. That's the key, because water moderated reactors run way higher than the boiling point of water. They have to run under very high pressure. So you have a thing that's very hot, has nuclear fuel in it, and is under a lot of pressure.
That sounds
Whereas
bad.
if you can do it, well, yes, it sounds bad, but it's actually one of the safer ways to do it up until the recent technologies, meaning with sodium, because the water is not just the thing that cools it, but it's also the thing that does what's called moderation, which is if you don't slow the neutrons down from the previous fission, then it can't continue to make more fission.
Right.
So if you take the reactor and you remove the water, well, now you just removed the thing that let the fission keep happening. Right. So it's sort of regulating in that respect within reason. There's still ways that bad things can happen, obviously, but it is sort of like a negative feedback loop to try to keep itself safe and stable.
Here's some good news. If you want to learn more about this, archive.org actually has Chris Crawford's Scram game, the game that I played on Atari, that teaches you in a very kind of rough way how nuclear power plants work. That's kind of cool.
You said the video games rot the mind. Look at this. Leo was educated.
How I learned everything I know. But Chris is going to have to write a new one with the natrium.
Look at that.
Wow, I've never seen this game.
Oh, it's a really fun game. Waiting for NRC license. Okay. and then you are the power plant. You are the Homer Simpson, and you have to keep the pressure appropriate in the boiling. You have
Look at that.
And maximize. And does this look familiar to you?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm like picking out, even though it's 8-bit graphics, I'm kind of picking out what the stuff is.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that sound is horrible, though.
You've heard this before? Yeah, this is 8-bit Atari sound, but it sounds like it's authentic.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing that Neutrum does is kind of cool is it separates, decouples the energy in nuclear islands so that the teams, the non-nuclear project teams, are not actually like the steam turbines and the salt tanks are out of the nuclear control area. So that's kind of this is interesting. Where do you? I imagine you don't have the same fears of nuclear power that we unwashed civilians do. I mean, we think of things like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, Fukushima, and say, "Oh, that's not safe."
Listen, the first week of my training in the Navy was about all of those other catastrophes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the ones that had happened up until that point, at least.
Right.
And yeah, there's plenty of lessons learned, but it really is about, hey, you have to have good procedures. You have to have trained people that know what they're doing. That was actually one of the big things for Chernobyl. Right. There were a lot of ways they could have avoided that, but they were just doing the wrong thing. Yeah. It was like a comedy of errors. So yeah, as long as you have good procedures in place and good, and you follow those and you do all of the appropriate things to keep the training up and everything, then yes, it can be safe. What Gates' project is working on, though, that's sodium, which is, that's just another version, another iteration on a sodium, sodium-cooled power plant. The trick with sodium is that if you let it cool off all the way, it's not liquid anymore, which is kind of a problem, right? Kind of hard to get that to flow through a pipe, obviously. But yeah, I do like the idea of having the two plants separated enough by enough distance that you can just have, okay, the reactor thing's going on in this one building and everything else is going on in a completely different, place off to the side, right? And the sodium also lets it run at a much higher temperature safely because, again, it's not boiling and there's not a fear of that. The thing can literally be at zero pressure. It's just very hot. Right. So that's one of the thermodynamics things is that the hotter you can get the coolant, whatever the cooling medium is, the more efficient the generation of power is on the other end. The higher the difference in temperature, the more efficient you can make the system.
I've also, of course, been taught that the nuclear waste is a problem because it's going to last hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years, but it sounds like we have ways to manage that as well.
Yeah, you can find, I forget where the site is, but it's even on Google Images. You can look up where all of the prior submarine or Navy nuclear reactor cores are. There's a site, it's in plain view of satellites, takes up not that much land, and they just wrap up the core.
Talking about Hanford or
container? That might be it.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've had to look.
Oh no, I know it is. This is the New Mexico tunnels in the old salt mines.
Yeah, right.
Oh no. This one's above ground.
Oh, it's above ground. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This one's above ground.
It's not. It's a lot smaller amount than one thinks of the really dangerous material.
Oh yeah. A submarine can go 20 years on a human being worth of mass of uranium. Right. It's like a little over 100 pounds worth. It takes up a little more volume because it's in a thing that's meant to contain itself and, keep everything isolated.
Given probably more than I do, and most of us do, about nuclear power generation, are you in favor of expanding our nuclear footprint?
The thing that I see is holding it back the most is just the sheer cost of building modern, safe power plants.
Right.
Which is why Gates is trying to tackle this problem in this way. Right. We would have had a lot more nuclear power plants now, if not for cost and regulation and other things that have been sort of ramping up. So there needs to be a safe way to do it, and there needs to be a cost-effective way to do it that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I get it. I'm kind of just neutral on the nuclear power thing because I see it as just another way to do it, right? But I also see all the utility and usefulness in solar and all the other things, right? But yes, at the end of the day, you do need a higher density of power generation in large cities. You're not necessarily going to have a very dense metro area and be able to power it with just solar on roofs. It's just not going to be enough.
Well, Gates.
And we also need political. I mean, there has to be a public education process that we actually trust, so that politicians and the public in general are comfortable with it. Because right now, I think there is still a huge amount of fear of nuclear power, some of which is justified. And perhaps, those of us, and I'll admit, I was part of the campaign for safe energy in 1980 and helped or argue against the proliferation of nuclear power at the time. But I think we all have to have an open mind.
Yeah.
I mean, if it can't be done safely, then go for it. But I'm not there yet.
Yes, education is key. I mean, heck, there are even, I don't want to call them horror stories because it was on a much smaller scale, but the initial, like the government or the military's initial foray into nuclear power involved one of their first reactor plants that they ever made that nobody here may have heard of, or maybe even nobody listening to this podcast right now, is they were trying to do an Army, I think, field reactor. They wanted a little reactor you could deploy out in the field to make your power.
Sure.
And the way that you moved the control rods was literally standing over the core that was in the ground and grabbing the rod and pulling it up.
Private, come over here. I got a job for you.
Well,
I have a related question. Is Trump completely off his rocker when he talks about the dangers of electric boats and ships? Or is there some danger that they could electrocute people or fish in the vicinity if something went wrong?
Okay, we're also talking about the guy whose primary concern with windmills.
No, I know that, but I actually did a little research on it, and there are some articles on the internet.
So if you had a shark 10 feet away from you, but you're on a boat that's sinking with an electric battery, would you choose the shark, is what we're asking, Allyn.
Listen, having been on a submarine, if there was flooding and sinking of the submarine in a way that it's not intended to sink, because submarines are supposed to sink normally, but if it was because of water coming in, electrocution is the least of my worries.
Yeah. Okay. I think in order to get electrocuted,
submarines,
pretty much all boats have batteries. I mean,
well, that's true.
So, I mean, you got to.
Boats are sinking all the time,
and they sink all the time.
Submarines have a very large battery. It's DC voltage. Yes, if you were in the battery compartment and seawater came in, then okay, sure, you might get shocked by that, but it's not going to start killing the fish around you.
So windmill. So I just want to make sure. Now I know windmills are safe, and electric boats are safe too. Okay, I just wanted to be sure about that.
Electric boats are safe.
Well. Okay. But hold on, let me finish.
All boats have batteries. All boats have batteries. Okay. Yes.
So this Army nuclear reactor story.
Yeah.
There was an accident,
and
it involved impaling the operator in the ceiling with the control rod.
The rod went
because he pulled it up way too fast. We still to this day don't know what the reason was. There were like rumors the guy broke up with his girlfriend, or there was something going on, and the guy wanted to off himself, and so he just grabbed the control rod, pulled up. The water in the reactor flashed to steam because the power went up so fast, and it turned into a steam kettle instantly.
Wow!
Impaled him in the.
That sounds a very unpleasant way to go.
I would imagine so. Yes. And then there was two other operators, and I think they both, just like Chernobyl, later they got a radiation spike.
Wow.
And they did not last either. Right?
Oh dear.
Yeah. I think it was NL1 or something. It's like what it's called. I mean, it's not hard to find. Just like Google like Army reactor.
Wow.
As you might imagine, the Army does not run nuclear reactors, probably because of that story. Right.
Jeez,
it's pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
That was story number one that I learned at like Naval Nuclear Power School. That was like first day.
You would think they would want to hide that information, but maybe
no. And actually, that's what's so impressive about the way that I saw that the Navy operated their nuclear programs is that it is all about education and transparency, and you have to know all of the bad things that can happen so that you don't do them yourself.
Don't do that.
Right? Yes.
And whatever you do, don't do that, Private.
Don't do that.
Greg Helton in our YouTube chat says, Scram, the term comes from the Chicago University reactor under the football stadium in the very earliest days of nuclear power. It stands for Supercritical Reactor Axeman. Is that true, Allyn?
Well, safety. Well, it's either super. I've heard it both ways. The other way is safety control rod Axeman.
Okay.
Which, yes, there was literally like a rope going over a pulley.
Guy with an axe.
To like, and it
drop the rods. Wow.
Yes. Exactly.
That's a scram. Wow.
That's a scram.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Greg. That's great. Let us. Now by the way, somebody has posted the story from America's only fatal reactor accident in Idaho 61 years ago.
SL1. There it is.
There it is. Wow. A Navy Seabee. And then 2 Army specialists.
Yep.
SL1.
And if you scroll down a little bit, there's a picture of what it looks like in the floor with the control rod.
I'm not sure we want to belabor this one. Look, I promised you some good news, and I will have.
No, it's not a picture of the guy. It's just a picture of what it looked like to operate that particular thing.
Oh, there's the rods. Wow.
Which just scares the heck out of me that you could just don't pull too fast. It's just ridiculous.
Holy cow! Now those boots he's wearing, are those carefully made protective?
They look like rubber tape.
They look like garbage bags tied with twine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for contamination in case something did get on the floor that you don't track it or you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just crazy.
Did you have to wear those?
We've come a long way.
On the submarine?
If we pretended there was a spill of contaminated a spill of contaminated like primary coolant.
Okay.
Then we would have to it was fancier than that. It was, better outfit than what is that from the 50s or something?
It really looks a little makeshift, to be honest, but okay.
Yeah, they were kind of winging it back then.
They were winging it. We've learned a lot since then. All right, we have some good news coming up. We have a great panel. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Allyn, for being here. You're our expert in naval intelligence and scramming.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. And of course, SSDs at Phison. Larry Magid from connectsafely.org and Paris Martineau from The Information. Our show today brought to you by 1Password. Now, we've talked for a long time about a little company called Collide that recently was acquired by 1Password, and now they have a solution called Extended Access Management that does everything you need to keep your network safe. In a perfect world, end users would only work on managed devices with IT-approved apps, but we don't live in a perfect world. Every day, employees use personal devices and unapproved apps that aren't protected by MDM or IAM or any other security tool. There is, frankly, a giant gap between the security tools we have and the ways we actually work. 1Password calls it the access trust gap, and they have created the first ever solution to fill it. That's 1Password's Extended Access Management. It secures every sign-in for every app on every device. Starting with the password manager, 1Password, you know and love, and the device trust solution you've heard us talk about for a long time called Collide. 1Password, Extended Access Management, cares about the user experience, cares about privacy, which means it can go places other tools can't. It can go on personal devices, contractor devices. It ensures that every device is known and healthy, and every login is protected. So now you can stop trying to ban BYOD or shadow IT and start protecting everyone with 1Password's Extended Access Management. Find out more at 1password.com/twit. That's the number 1, PASSWORD.com/TWIT. Really happy for the folks at Collide, a great group. They've joined up with 1Password, and now they've got a tool that does it all. 1Password Extended Access Management. Find out more. 1password.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. We go from pulling reactor rods by hand to the good news that a judge has blocked Mississippi's age verification law. We're talking about the dangers of social media. Number of states, I think almost 20, are planning in some way or another to require that there is age verification before you can use social media. Well, a federal judge has, I think, fortunately blocked a Mississippi law that would have required age verification for all and parental consent for teens in order to make accounts on many social media sites. Law was set to take effect on Monday. It was designed to protect kids from sexually explicit content. At least that's the ostensible reason. But platforms like Facebook or YouTube would have to use some technique to verify users' ages. And the problem is there's no good way to do that.
Yep.
You agree, Larry?
Yeah, I spent a whole year, admittedly it was a long time ago, but I was on this panel that was run by 49 state attorneys general from around the country and out of Harvard's Berkman Center. And we spent a year studying age verification. And at the time, concluded that the only way to verify the age of a minor was to access documents that we didn't have access to, like Social Security records, school records, and other confidential data. So the age-old question of privacy versus, quote, safety got in there. You can easily verify the age of an adult. You and I, Leo, have credit. Even if we weren't public figures, there's information about us that can verify who we are and how old we are. That's not true with young people. So it's very difficult to do. There are some interesting technologies. There's a company in the UK that claims it can verify the age through eye scans and get a relatively accurate, they call it age assurance, but that technology is far from proven. And the problem is it gets into privacy questions. I mean, do we want to have to present a verified ID every time we log into a website that may not be appropriate for children? And then what do we do if, let's say, the site is appropriate, let's say, for 16-year-olds, but not 14-year-olds? It is almost impossible, again, with the legally accessible information we currently have, to know the exact age of a minor. And so while there may be some interest in figuring this out, it's a big issue in the internet safety world. Age assurance is something that we talk about all the time. We've yet to come up with a way that does it in a way that protects the privacy of the individuals. And then you get into the other thing we were talking about earlier, which is, should we do it? I mean, I do agree that pornography is inappropriate for certainly young children, but a lot of these age verification processes would deny children, or I should say teenagers, access to social media, which is speech. And if I were a 15-year-old gay kid and wanted access to a gay community to experiment and talk about my sexuality, and my parents didn't happen to want to approve that, I would be very upset about any age verification or parental control regimen, because it would interfere with my ability to explore my sexuality or my religion or my politics or anything else that I might want to do independent of my parents, assuming that the parents were even in a position to consider whether to give permission. Perhaps they don't have the literacy skills. Perhaps they're on drugs. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of kids whose parents are not in a position to make those informed decisions. So at the moment, we are opposed to these forms of age verification. I'm pleased the judge ruled as they did. But I do think it's something we have to continue to explore.
The judge said that it burdens adults' First Amendment rights to do this.
Absolutely.
They also said that the Mississippi Attorney General had failed to show. So the group opposing this bill was NetChoice, which is a trade group, primarily Google. I think Facebook's Meta is part of it. NetChoice said, giving parents more information about how to supervise their kids online should be sufficient. The court said the Attorney General failed to show that it would be insufficient. The Attorney General said, we will continue to fight for this common sense law because our children's mental health, physical security, and innocence should not take a backseat to big tech profits. And this is exactly why I was, and I know you too, Larry, were so upset with the Surgeon General's suggestion that we should have a warning label on social media.
Right. And by the way, it's why Connect Safe, we just hired a policy director.
Good.
We're actually going to be going to Sacramento and other state capitals and weighing in on some of these bills in an attempt to get rational thought instead of reactive thought into protecting kids.
Yeah. Anyway, so far, none of this has happened, as far as I know, but there are more states attempting it. And, of course, if it's appealed to the Supreme Court, who knows? Who knows? What evil?
I would like to point out that in the state of Mississippi, there is no minimum age to own or possess a rifle or shotgun.
Right.
And they're not dangerous. They're perfectly safe.
Right.
Nobody's ever been harmed by a rifle or a shotgun.
Right.
Should I query what the age of consent is in Mississippi? Probably best left alone.
You can get married, but no social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on whether they're first cousin or a second cousin.
Yeah. All right. I think we could probably say that this show has completed its mission. In the words of
you sound so confident.
George W. Bush, mission accomplished. He
was right when he said that, and that's why we're right when we're saying this.
Yes, you see, it's all right. That is Paris Martineau. You're going to see a lot more of her every Wednesday on This Week in Geriatrics, where she and her grandpas
I'm there every Wednesday.
Oh, you should have me as a guest then if you have a geriatric.
Yeah, you fit right in.
Come on. We need more people to push the average age up.
Yeah.
Benito and I are working hard, Paris, to get some young people on that show. So you're not
no,
alone.
I really like the segment we have every other week where you guys talk about some show from like the 1840s or something like
Green
that.
Acres. You know, I saw
Leo and I were on
Jeopardy the other day.
Already. I saw on Jeopardy the other day. That's the sort of content you're going to be getting on This Week in Google.
That somebody used the theme, the Green Acres theme, which we've talked about on the show, and Ava Gabor's "I Get Allergic Smelling Hay" as a sample in some modern pop song that you young people would like.
Oh, very fun.
Nice.
But I forgot the name of it. And I wish I had. Because then I could sound hip. Vic, let me see. Groove is in the Heart. Bootsy Collins and Q-Tip.
Wait, that's from the 90s.
Oh, never mind.
That's new to you. I'm really proud of you, Leo. That's huge. That's real new.
I should have known if it was on Jeopardy, then it wouldn't be something really modern. It would be some old song.
I love the line of, Paris, we're going to get some new, hip, fresh blood on This Week in Google. I saw on Jeopardy last week about this new song the kids are listening to from 35 years ago.
What's that scene with the oh man, the actor's name is escaping me. But, hey kids.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes, hey kids. Yeah. Hello, how do you do, fellow
Hello,
kids?
fellow kids.
Fellow young kids or whatever.
Well, we're going to rename it This Week in Golden Girls. How about that? How would you like that?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, just as an update for that on Twig, we're having actually Molly White this week.
Molly White, you've heard of her?
Hey,
young person.
That's two.
Yeah,
that's two of us.
And Jeff's not going to be there, so the average age will be cut in half.
It's going to be the lowest it's ever been.
That's great. Benito, you got Molly White. Fantastic. Yep. Jeff has the week off. Wednesday, This Week in Google, the wonderful Molly White.
Jeff is taking a typesetting class.
A typesetting class?
Because that's what one does when you reach 68. I want to learn how to set type.
Might be making a comeback.
Yeah.
Might be.
I'm so sorry, Paris. That's all I can say. I don't want to be this old. It's not my idea.
Listen, it's delightful.
As my wife often says, it beats the alternative, right? Larry Magid, you are a fantastic addition to our crew. Always President and CEO of ConnectSafely.org at Larry Magid. Plug something.
Well, we've been talking about keeping kids safe online, and on Connect Safely, there are parent guides to all the things that youngins use, like TikTok and Instagram. And
see, this is what I mean.
Discord,
this is the education parents need to do the job instead of some Surgeon General's warning, right?
Yeah, tech for tots, little kids. So we work really hard to try to educate people. We don't We don't hide. You mentioned the research about the article by Nathan Davies. We just passed it, what the research says.
Yeah.
So we try to be research-based, and we try to give sound advice, and it's fairly simple. The other thing I want to plug is go a little bit further, our podcast, Are We Doing Tech Right? I'm really enjoying it. I'm hosting that, and we get some really interesting things. And the question we ask is, well, for example, when we interviewed Vid Cerf and Leonard Kleinrock, two of the founders of the internet, if you had to do it again, what would you do differently? And then you'll see up there the interview with NAMLE, the National Association of Media Literacy Education, to find out what's happening in terms of disinformation and media literacy. We do this every other week. It drops on Wednesdays, and you can get it wherever your podcasts are. You get them at called Are We Doing Tech Right? And the answer is sometimes.
But education is so important. I really love the beat that you've chosen. It's really, really important, and I hope more parents will check it out, connectsafely.org. And then, people who watch our shows are technically literate. Share this with your less technically literate friends who are also parents, because they need to know this as well. And maybe share the podcast with them too. Are We Doing Tech Right? Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Our favorite submariner, nuclear tech.
Favorite. You only have one.
You're the only one. Intelligence officer, NSA contractor, memory guru, hardware expert, Allyn Malventano. And look at his backdrop.
Walking me down like this is your life over here.
This is good. Look at the backdrop is your life right there. Look at that. It is
fantastic.
Isn't that great?
Got the submarine picture behind me.
It's rich with stuff, with lore. Is this your man cave, Allyn? I've never asked you.
No, this is the main office in the house. My wife's desk is right over there.
Oh, nice. So she has to put up with this crap too, huh?
Well,
Does she have her own shelves with her own stuff?
Yeah, she's got some stuff over there.
She's got some tchotchkes over there. Good. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Must be hell to dust it, but I'm sure that's your job, right?
Oh, we do that as infrequently as possible.
He had a nuclear dust bunny.
Yes.
There ought to be some touchless duster. Why don't you invent that?
I wish. Somebody needs to do that.
Could involve nuclear rods and steam.
I think it's called a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, that.
Well, yeah.
Allyn, Faison, anything to plug? What's up?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on stuff. We have a Pascari line of SSDs that we're launching.
Now, do you sell to individuals, or are they rebranded by other people, or how does that work?
Yeah, historically, Faison has mostly just been they make the controller and then they distribute the controller to a bunch of other companies, and they're sort of behind the scenes. And then for some folks, they're putting their label on the entire SSD that we make. Right. So we do go all the way up to the point of assembling an entire SSD. We just historically have not put our own label on it. Right? It's usually through resellers, through other brands. Recently, we're trying to actually put our own name on some of the products as well. So we have that. And we're still doing the other thing too, but it'd be nice to have our own name on something.
Just it's Pascari, Pascari. Pascari.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're doing some AI stuff. We talked about a little bit last show. I think I teased some of it.
Oh, yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah. So it's mainly trying to bring – you're going to have folks, actually like all of us on the – well, maybe not so much Paris. Maybe this could be the way to get Paris to use AI a little, is there are use cases where folks do not want the information to leave their premise, but they want to do AI things, but they're for whatever reasons, legal, medical, like they're not allowed to just have that information in the cloud.
Right.
So how do you take advantage of the AI stuff, but do it locally, right? And you can just download models. Most of the company like Google and Meta and everybody are releasing their models publicly, and you can download them. And if you have enough hardware, you can actually run inference. You can chat with a model that you download. It won't be as large as what ChatGPT has, but it is something that you can do. Where we come in is we allow a process called fine tuning, which is where you take a general purpose LLM and you add your own knowledge into it. right? So for example, I could take all of my writing that I did for PC-Per, all my reviews, and I can fine-tune a general purpose model, and I can make it an expert on testing SSDs, for example. And then I can chat with that and ask it.
Can you filter out the bad information, or simply just have your information come up on top? Or how do you, I mean?
Yeah, you're basically, it's a form of the training process. So when Meta or Google are initially making the model from scratch, and they're just putting all of this information into it to try to give it a general purpose, intent, that's the thing that takes a whole bunch of compute. This fine-tuning process is a subset of that, but it is fairly resource intensive, and it's not something you can do easily in your own house unless you have a rack full of GPUs, usually. So where we come in is we enable, we make SSDs that are pretty quick, and we add that SSD layer as an ability to have more graphics memory than you actually have effectively, and then that gives you enough space to be able to do the fine-tuning process with a lot less GPUs. Mm-hmm. So again, that fine-tuning process is just you're taking the general language model, which would be very difficult to just create from scratch on your own. You just can't do that in a house, in your own home. But you can use that as a starting point, nudge it. You're sort of shifting the vectors in the way of what you are fine-tuning with, the data that you are providing. It's almost like the analogy is, actually here, I'll go one step better. We've seen announcements from Microsoft and about a Copilot for Windows, and it's going to be able to go through your Word documents locally and reference them and whatnot. That's not fine-tuning. That's a thing called RAG, which is where it's sort of referencing that information. It's still a general purpose AI, but it's just quickly reading up whenever you ask it something. It'll go through all your Word documents really fast and see if it can find the answer, right? Fine-tuning is almost like you're looking at it ahead of time. You're kind of learning about the information, and then you have a better understanding of it. And so it's more like then when you ask it that sort of whatever the prompt is that you provide, whatever the question is, it's almost as if it's coming off the top of its head, as opposed to having to, pull it out of a book, right? So there is utility to doing that fine-tuning process. And our purpose with our product is to try to get that into the hands of, more local, like small businesses, universities, places that have some reason to be able to do that sort of process, but not rely on the cloud. They do not want that info to leave. Yeah.
So generally enterprise as opposed to home use.
No. I mean, we can scale up to enterprise, but our focus is on the smaller, the smaller end. Because enterprises, they're going to have a rack full of GPUs in the first place. They already
own
spent
their own
millions of
hardware.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bought a whole bunch of hardware. This is to be able to do it with a lot less hardware.
Nice.
The trade-off is time. So if you're willing to let it go for a day or two for a pretty large model, fine-tune, you can get the same result that you could, yes, the enterprise could do that in an hour. But if you're willing to wait, you can do it for a tenth of the price.
Nice.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I wish you luck. I think it sounds like interesting stuff.
It's interesting. I was worried it was gimmicky when I first came on board, but then when I studied up on it, I was like, oh, okay, there's an actual purpose for this. It's
That's
not
cool.
like it's not like what we saw at what was it, Computex, where everybody was trying to slap AI on all the things and people.
Yeah, it's like peanut butter. Everything's better.
This
with
is an
layers of
AI power supply.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
It's like, oh, what does it do for AI? Well, you can plug it into an AI computer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I will say the one way I do use AI in my day-to-day life is and I think I've talked about this either on this show or This Week in Google before. I use Mac Whisper, which runs OpenAI's whisper transcription LLM locally on my machine to transcribe sensitive interviews. So I feel like local adoption of these models is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not to mention, I think good for the environment instead of those big giant uses.
And what I'm looking for is AI models that I can trust. I mean, I want a model where I don't have to constantly be on guard for hallucinations.
Right.
And that might be essentially a local area network approach, so to speak, of a database that a company puts together or a research institution puts together, or some consortium of credible sources that's devoid of all the junk.
your best bet is actually a combination of both. You would start with a general model, so you're not doing all of that work. You would do a fine-tuning process, so you're teaching about your specialty, the thing you actually want to reference, want to use it for, and then you can also do that RAG thing that I talked about on top of that, which is where now the thing already knows about your information, but in addition, when you ask it something, it can reference the information on the fly and actually give you the reference. And it can say, yes, here's the answer. And by the way, it's on page 27 of this thing that you wrote.
But if, for example, if I had who won the 2020 election, there are going to be millions of sites that are going to say Donald Trump won it. I want it to be smart enough to just filter those out. So, know that that is false information.
Have you tried the new Claude sonnet? Claude is the AI from Anthropic, and they focus very much on safety as opposed to Google. In fact, the folks at Anthropic left Google because they were concerned about safety. And I think they're trying to do that. They now have some RAG solutions as well. But Claude 3.5, give me an example of some sort of information. I have it. I've subscribed to it. It says I'm using limited free plan. I'm not logged in. I thought I was. I paid for it, and I have to say I'm very impressed with it. I have now, I think, 4 or 5 $20 a month subscriptions to AIs. One of these days I'm gonna have to settle on one of them. Here it is. This is my paid one on my phone. What do you want to know?
Cancel one of your. Oh gosh.
Give me a question.
What are the top 10 stories in tech news over the last week?
What are the top 10 stories in tech over the last week? Yeah, because then I could have just done this instead of the show, right?
Yeah, that could have.
Doesn't have enough information.
As an AI assistant, I don't have real-time access to current news events. My knowledge was last updated in April. Oh, screw you. But you know what? That's the answer you wanted, right? Really, Larry, you wanted it to say, hey, I don't know, instead of making something up.
Ask it which is better, Mac or Windows.
Oh, you're really asking for trouble. Hey, which is better, Mac or Windows?
That'll be interesting.
Really. It depends.
Of course,
It depends.
Yeah, but I would give that answer too.
Actually, this is pretty good. It says Macs are known for sleek design, user-friendly interface, generally more secure against malware, integrates well with other Apple devices, yes. Preferred for creative work, often more expensive. Windows offers more hardware choices and price points, greater software compatibility, more customizable, dominant in business environments, generally less expensive. Those are actually completely accurate assessments.
That's good.
I would say that's actually fairly
Why do we
good.
need tech journalists?
Let me ask
question.
Hey, why do we need tech journalists? Maybe.
Or do we need tech journalists?
Oh, no. Here's 10 reasons we need tech journalists. Look at that. Number 1, information dissemination, analysis and context, watchdogs, consumer advocacies, trend identification, bridging the gap. This is, you know what? Claude has consistently impressed me. I have to say, it's not quite so. ChatGPT is kind of ingratiating a little bit, It's trying to make me like it. Claude is pretty good. I've been very impressed. Anyway.
Oh, that's why it told me I had an Emmy.
Should I ask it who
that
you
explains
are?
It.
Should I say?
Yeah, I like you.
No, I like you. You must have an enemy. You look like you have an enemy.
Right.
Who is Larry Magid?
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
This is not good.
What, does it not know me?
Look at it. It knows you.
It's going.
Prominent technology journalist and internet safety advocate. He's been writing and speaking about technology since the early 80s. Contributed to major news outlets, including CBS News, San Jose Mercury News, and Forbes. Well known for his work on online safety for particularly children and teenagers. Co-founded ConnectSafely.org. Authored several books, including the Mini Manual for a Free Internet. Right?
Oh, God. That's kind of.
Long time ago. Magid has hosted radio programs, policy work, education, a doctorate in education from UMass. Is that true?
True, actually.
Nice. UMass.
Well,
Which UMass?
UMass Amherst.
Amherst, the best
Yeah.
UMass. Given the nature of this query about a specific individual, I should note while I strive for accuracy, there's possibility that some details may not be perfectly up to date or complete.
That's a relief.
Disclaimer.
It didn't get anything wrong, though, right? And it didn't say you won an Emmy.
The only thing is actually mini manual for free university that I wrote in 1970 something, but that's close enough.
It's amazing that it found
It's
it.
pretty good. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff's not in Wikipedia, so I'm not
That's
sure
the
where
real
it got wrong.
test, right?
I know that's what's amazing. I know.
All right.
The,
Go ahead.
I've been playing because of the work I've been doing. I've been playing around with like, okay, how small of a model can you get away with running, and like, where does it fall off? And I was playing with the chat version, so that means it's quantized down to fewer bits per parameter when you do a chat version because it's supposed to fit on more hardware. And it was the Llama 3. It was the new Llama 3 model, but only the 8 billion ones, the smallest version. And it was quantized, so it was like almost the worst case scenario, but the newest model that's out. And I asked it, like, who am I? And it tried to tell me I was like the founder and editor-in-chief of ANandTech.
Well, you know.
I was like, I'll take it, but, you know.
That's interesting.
So there's a famous Larry Magid in the music industry in Philadelphia, and sometimes it says that we are the same person. You know, that we are known for our technology work and our music leadership, which is certainly not true. At least I'm not a music guru.
Right. I guess Allyn was close enough to Anand that it just sort of crossed the streams, and okay, fine. I guess I own, you know, where's my paycheck?
Really?
We have in the YouTube chat a guy named Greg Helton, who apparently was also a nuclear tech in the 70s.
Sweet.
Yeah. Wow. And he says, my question for AI is, well, let's ask it. Why didn't Mary the First, Bloody Mary, eliminate her heir to the throne, her half-sister Elizabeth the First, who was a Church of England? So I don't know what the answer is, but I'll ask it.
That's the kind of thing an AI would give you surprising answers to. Like these really obscure, you know, when you pull from crazy, like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the question anymore. Let's try again.
I like that was the prompt.
That was the prompt.
I don't like the question anymore.
You're getting too old, Leo.
Why didn't Bloody Mary eliminate Elizabeth the First? Question mark. Is that sufficient? I don't know. Let's see. There are several reasons why Mary the First of England, commonly known as Bloody Mary, did not eliminate her half-sister. Succession concerns, lack of concrete evidence, political consequences. I think, Greg, this is a pretty good answer. Look at this. Look at this. 8 points.
But herein lies the problem. None of us know the actual answer, so we don't know if this
Greg
is
must. Greg
So
must.
we
Or he
don't
wouldn't
know if
ask
this
that
is right,
question.
though.
You got to ask a question that you know the answer to.
Then what's the point?
You know what's hold on, you know what's next? You know what's next? I can already see this coming.
What?
A metacrawler for all the AIs.
Oh, that's a good
An
idea.
AI?
Like Dogpile
It's
for
gonna be
search.
It's going to be dogpile for AIs. You're going to just gonna query ChatGPT. It's
the
gonna
answer-
hit them all.
The answer to your question is why you'd ask it a question, you know the answer, because I do it all the time. It's to tickle your memory of things that you might forget.
There you
So,
go.
for example, if I'm doing an article about something, there's so much I know, and then there are things, oh, yeah, I knew that, but I didn't think about it.
Yeah, this isn't
it's
worth
very
bringing the
useful
planet
to
down
it.
for, though. I'm sorry.
I think this is pretty good. I mean, if I
Agreed.
were writing a Elizabethan historic docudrama, I might use these as the reasons.
You would use that?
Succession
You would,
concerns.
you know,
Despite the religious differences,
Actually
Elizabeth was
consult an expert?
Mary's heir. Who needs an expert? I got Claude. I pay $20 a month for it. I got to use it for something. All right.
That's true.
Let us adjourn until Wednesday.
I move to adjourn.
Paris, you got to come back Wednesday. We're going to have Molly White. That's going to be a lot of fun. The creator of Web 3.0 is going just great. Another wonderful website.
Molly is always a hoot.
She is fantastic. We will see you then. Thank you, Paris Martineau. Allyn and Larry, I hope to see you again soon on our
Me
show.
too.
We
Have to come to
appreciate
your
it.
studio.
Oh, yeah, we'd love it. While there is still a studio. This would
Well, I'll come
be
to
a
your
good.
house.
You come to my house.
here.
Better
We'll
coffee.
go for a walk and record the show.
There you go. We could do it on the road.
Exactly.
We do this show every Sunday afternoon, 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific. That's 5 to 8 Eastern, 2100 UTC. As we've seen, you can not only watch it now on YouTube, youtube.com/twit/live, but on Discord, if you're a Club Twit member. More about that in a moment. But also on Twitch, on X, on Kick, wherever you can find streaming video.
Even on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, really? Facebook and LinkedIn? Amazing. We're everywhere. And if you're just watching us for the first time, I thank you. Do hope that you will watch again. Remember, you don't have to watch live. We make on-demand versions of our shows available on the website, twit.tv. There's also a YouTube channel dedicated to the video of the show, so you can watch there or subscribe to Twit in your favorite podcast player. This show's been going on we're in our 20th year now. So if your podcast player cannot find Twit, well, I got to wonder what kind of podcast player are you using. If you're a club member, you get ad-free versions of this show, plus all sorts of extras, and it's only $7 a month. Really helps us out because the financial end's gotten a little tight. It's one of the reasons we're closing the studio. Ad support has dwindled. Audiences have shrunk. There's a lot more competition. But we want to keep doing what we do. We really think it's important. And if you think so too, twit.tv/clubtwit. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you in the club. That's it for this episode of This Week in Technology. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time. And for now, another Twit is in the can.
This is amazing. Bye-bye.